the county staff to take care of the secretarial recording of the minutes. So we now are open for nominations for chair.
I'm sorry, the audio only just came on 2 seconds ago, so I didn't hear anything that you said, Bonnie.
All right, what we've done so far is just the typical introduction and an explanation to the audience as to how the board operates. And we're at the point now of electing officers for the coming year. We'll take nominations now for the chairperson.
I'd like to nominate Jacob.
Do we have any other nominations? A second to that nomination?
I'll second that nomination.
All right, Jacob, would you be willing to accept that position? All right, all in favor of Jacob as chair for the coming year?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jacob is now the chair, and we will do some switching of positions right now.
All right. And now continuing on with our elections of officers, do we have any nominations for the vice chairperson? Any nominations for the vice chairperson position on the board?
I'll nominate Jill.
Bundy nominates Jill for the position. Do we have any other nominations or a second, actually, for the position?
I'll second that.
And we have a second here. All right. All those in favor of Jill DeLong as the vice chair of the Board of Adjustment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. The motion carries, and Jill is our vice chair of the board. And now we move on to our secretary position, which is reminded that when you take on that position as secretary, then you kind of relinquish your duties to Lori. So it's a fun job. You don't have to do a whole lot. Any nominations for secretary of the Board of Adjustment? Any nominations?
Possibly would one of our new members be interested in doing that, as you know, you'll be on for a few years?
I'll have to decline that. I just have too many other things on my plate. Sorry.
I will. Okay.
All right.
All right. Nomination. Any seconds there?
I'll second it.
Ken, second?
With the question.
Okay.
We've discussed this at the Planning Commission. Say the chair and the co-chair are unavailable for some reason, then will it go to the secretary in this case?
I would have to look at the Board of Adjustment ordinance to determine that.
Because it's come up the last 2 years because I was the secretary and they determined I was third in line.
I'll make sure I know the answer to that before we go too far. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second for Robert Schwagel to be secretary of the board. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those in favor, I assume. Motion carries, and we have a secretary of the board. And now we move on to a period where we have our oaths of office, and so we've got a bunch of them here. I think I'm the only one right here that doesn't have one before me for an oath of office. So Jill. Yep. Yep. So Jill, Robert, George, Bonnie, and Ken, we'll have your oath of office, and if you can stand and recite that oath together.
I, Jill DeLong, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will faithfully execute and discharge the duties of the Board of Adjustment in the County of Stearns, Minnesota, according to law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to the law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
Wonderful. Congratulations. And so this code of ethics, do we have anything before us for that? I see that's on our agenda here. Do we? Nothing? Okay. Okay. And then we have our meeting minutes from December 9th of 2021. Has everybody looked over that? Can we get a motion to approve those meeting minutes from the 9th of December?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Get a second?
Jill DeLong, I'll second.
All right, very good. A second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved here. And so now we get, now I believe, to our regular agenda items, starting with William and Tamara Houston of Avon, Minnesota. So if you'll come down to our hot spot, our hot seat over here. And so this is a request, it's an appeal of the administrative decision rendered by the Stearns County Environmental Services Department on the requirement to obtain a permit for proposed modifications to the existing subsurface sewage treatment system. The affected property is 23.10A, part of Northeast 4, Section 17, Track 125 North, Range 30 West, Avon Township. And that address of the affected property is 17559 360th Street, Avon, Minnesota. And then so since this is appeal, there is no public testimony as I understand it. And what do we do with that here? Do we just hear?
Overview of staff.
Yeah, can we have the overview of the staff report for this appeal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property owners are appealing the staff decision that the proposed modification to the existing subsurface sewage treatment system does not meet the definition of a minor repair per Stearns County SSTS Ordinance Number 422, Section 3.2.21. Therefore, the activity requires a permit under Section 7.2.4 of said ordinance. The applicants own a 23.1 acre property in Avon Township. June of 2007, a permit was issued for a replacement subsurface sewage treatment system to serve the existing dwelling on the property. November of 2007, the system was installed by a licensed installer, including a 1,330-gallon septic tank and 660 gallons of pump tank capacity and 816 square feet of drain field capacity. That met the sizing requirements of the septic code at that time. October of 2021, the applicants applied for a construction site permit to replace existing dwelling on the property. The plan submitted by the applicants for the replacement dwelling proposed to relocate the existing SSTS pump line that runs from the pump tank to the drain field. Staff determined the relocation or modification of this component is not a minor repair as identified in Stearns County Ordinance. Therefore, it requires a permit. Stearns County Ordinance 422 defines a minor repair as the repair or replacement of an existing damaged or faulty component, part of an SSTS that will return the SSTS to operable condition. The repair shall not alter the original area, dimension, design, specification, or concept of the SSTS. Repairs to sewage pump tanks and or soil dispersal systems are not minor repairs. A permit to modify the existing system would require all components to be brought into compliance with the existing code. Currently, for a 4-bedroom home, the system would be required to have 1,500 gallons of septic tank capacity, 500 gallons of pump tank capacity, and 770 square feet of drain field. November 2021, the applicants enter into a compliance agreement with Stearns County with the terms as follows. The applicants agree to submit an appeal of an administrative decision to the Board of Adjustment. If the appeal is denied, the applicants agree to submit a design for an on-site sewage treatment system permit by June 15th 2022 with installation of said system by July 15th of 2022. November 22nd, 2021, a construction site permit was issued for the replacement dwelling. This application was not noticed, as it did not need to be noticed. It's an appeal, so there's no correspondence that's been received. And we did ask that the applicants did not visit the site because it's a decision to appeal, or an appeal of a decision instead of a variance.
Yep. And the applicant, is there anything you wish to offer to the board at this time?
There is, and I'll state my name, William Houston. We live at the address as mentioned here. Brian, would you mind passing out documents? And Jill, I apologize. I only have hard copies. So, is this where I go through my spiel? Yep. Excellent. All right, so what they're handing out there, and 9 copies, so there should be enough. First 2 pages are the timeline on what happened. As you can see in the staff report, we submitted October 12th for a construction site permit. It wasn't until November 10th that we actually heard back from Environmental Services. And the main thing on there is they were kicking it back and requiring a septic design because, and I quote, because of the new dwelling being constructed, our house, the system would need to be brought to current standards. I bring this up because it's very important that Environmental Services later drops this requirement. So the next half a page of documentation on correspondence and everything else, back and forth, is basically all for naught because later on they go and drop that requirement. So you get down here, down to 11/17. So this is now over a month after we submitted our permit. And an email, Shelley states, I'm going to read this for Jill. The compliance inspection that was completed fulfills the requirements of section 9.2.28 of ordinance number 422, allowing for the new home to be hooked to the existing system. So this completely torpedoes the original requirement, or the original letter requirement. Shell confirms that Troy, Brian, and Mark, sorry guys, were incorrect to state this because I've talked with multiple people. I couldn't even reach Troy, left multiple voicemails for him. Then Shelley goes on to state that when the construction site permit application for the new dwelling was received, it was noted that a supply line, aka pump line, for the system needs to be modified, which is beyond the scope of a minor repair as defined in ordinance 422. So now we move into that supply line discussion. Shelley also states the supply line is considered by the department as a component of the tanking. I request documentation and received the said documentation as shown on MPCA diagrams as part of the SCS system. And I believe that that's also in your packet, that same diagram. I included it on page 3 as well, and it is noted that the septic tank is in one location, the supply pipe is in another location, and the soil dispersion system is in a different location. Those are 3 separate things. I have also printed out state statute on that page stating that the supply pipe means a non-perforated pipe, the purpose of which is to transport sewage tank effluent. You'll go on to see that there's also definitions of the septic tank and sewage tank, and all of those are to hold and then release. They're not to transport. So supply pipe is not part of either tank system as defined by state statute. Furthermore, replacement means the removal or discontinued use of any major portion of the ISTS system and reinstallation. The supply pipe is not a major portion. The tank is a major portion. The soil disbursement is a major portion of the system. The supply pipe is not a major portion. So then I'm back on 11/17/2021 on the second page. Also in that second email that day, Shelley states by lowering the pipe as indicated that alters the original design and inspection approval, pipe elevation data is not required to be documented at the time of the STS installation. I would argue that lowering the pipe does not change the design per the original permit. Shelley confirmed this in a third email that day when I asked if the original installation has had laid the pipe lower, a new design, larger system would have been needed. Basically, where we thought the pipe was, I showed it on the original site plan that it was going to have to be moved, lowered something to get the house in there. So I'm like, if they just installed it lower originally, basically per that permit, would it have been okay? And Shelley or where is that? She responds, strange but true based on how we interpret this to date. I would argue that staff interpretations of ordinance should never be described as strange but true. I called Shelley at the next day to make formatting changes to that agreement that you have seen. Also, let her know how disappointed I was. I had to sign a 6-page agreement. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I work with cities all the time. This would have been just a conditional approval at any city, and the county is requiring a 6-page agreement for it. On 11/18, I emailed Shelley to verify that we're on the same page for the reason of the appeal. Is it the supply pipe? Is it what? I never received a return to that email. I did ask for the original permit and sent that back. And I asked if the supply pipe should match the location in the permit, the existing location, and that email was never returned either. So I have Steering County ordinance on, I think it's page 4. And so 7.1 there. And it says, well, you guys can read it, but my response to that is this does not say that a permit is required for any septic work. It just says that an appropriate permit is needed. If no permit is appropriate, then no permit is needed. 7.2.1 is activities requiring a construction site permit. I would argue that the proposed work would fall under the repair or replacement of a component. However, the work will not alter the function, change the capacity, change the location, or otherwise change the system's design or layout or function. This assertion is proven by Shelley's email on 11/17. I have also included a letter from the septic designer that I would say, this is from Tim Haig at Watab Inc., who did the original design as well. The letter is dated January 10 of this year. It says, Will, I designed your current septic system on 11/1/2007 for the existing 4-bedroom home. It was installed by Lang Trenching and inspected by Stearns County on 11/6/2007. We completed a compliance inspection on this on 9/13/2021 and found the system to be compliant. Since that time, you've begun construction on a new 4-bedroom home, which is to be connected to the existing septic system. It is my professional opinion that the current septic system configuration meets the requirements and intent of the original design and that no changes are necessary. I have the original design, which I don't, or permit, which I don't think you guys have, or do you have a copy of that? It may not be, but either way, it meets, there's actually 3 different layouts shown in that permit, but it meets the requirements of that. The layout, the existing, or the layout as it is now with the house under construction is the same as the layout on there. County staff has said that their interpretation of this ordinance is strange, and it meets the requirements of a minor repair. I asked another excavator, just trying to keep a degree of separation. I said, I was being proactive on this, trying to make sure that my excavator knew what he was doing, what he was getting into. I put the location of the pipe best as I could find it. I said, if I hadn't put that on there and you'd been excavating and dug that up, would you have contacted the county? And he laughed and said, no. We would just move the pipe and push it over. And everybody that's working on septic has to be licensed by the county, right? I mean, they have to know what they're doing, correct? So, I mean, that's the way things would have been handled. So, but because I was being proactive and showed it on the plan, well, first they held up my permit for almost a month in winter conditions, which didn't help. But it's a minor repair. I can't even fathom that it wouldn't be a minor. Sorry, it was a lot.
No, staff, do you have any comment there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer a few of the questions that I've heard put before us this evening, licensed contractors are licensed by the state of Minnesota, not the county. We don't have anything to do with the licensing or the bonding or the insuring of those entities. So let's clarify that.
If I may, are they required to do annual training, semi-annual training?
Not through the county.
Okay.
The state of Minnesota requires anywhere from 12 to 18 credits of continuing education classes through most likely the University of Minnesota, and that's based on a 3-year period. Again, not under our control. What I'd like to point out, though, is the repair of the pipe. It may be true what he states regarding talk to another installer. They may have pushed it over. They may have done that when they have hit it, but would it have been right? No, it would have required a permit, just as we stated. I would like to point out specifically the definition of a minor repair: the repair or replacement of an existing, damaged, or faulty component of an SSTS. When this was put before us, it was not an existing damaged component or a faulty component. It only became in that fashion after I understand that most likely the excavation of the new home occurred. Therefore, it was self-inflicted damage. So again, it was not existing. It does not meet the definition of a minor repair. With that being said, the replacement of the supply line pipe, the pump line going from the tank to the drain field, is a major component of the system. We view it as so. It is laid out in the diagrams as a component of an SSTS. It is covered under Chapter 7080, which we adopted by reference in our local ordinance 422. It is not covered by the Department of Labor and Industry, or DOLI. That pipe is the pipe that goes from the house to the tank. Anything after the first wall of the inlet of the tank is SSTS, and it's governed by these rules, not DOLI rules. Therefore, it would require the permit, and when we issue a permit, updates to the system must be made per section 7.24 of the existing ordinance, bringing the system into compliance, ordinance compliance. And at this point, we would be asking then not only of the permit or the redesign work cover the pump line that needs to be fixed and moved, but it also would include additional tanking to meet today's tanking requirements, sizing per the guidelines that we've adopted, the county has adopted. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, on my, sorry here, I think third page, that have the state statute definitions. I'll just go to replacement. Replacement means the removal or discontinued use of any major portion of an ISTS. So that's major, as they are describing it. And then it goes on to define what those major systems are, such as a new sewage tank, holding tank, dosing chamber, privy, or soil dispersion system. The supply pipe is not considered major per state statute.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
if I could, I guess that's why we're here, right? It's a matter of opinion and interpretation. But I don't know how you get sewage from your tank to your drain field if you don't have a pipe. Kind of a major piece of the puzzle.
It states right there it is not major, and then it goes on under septic tank and sewage tank and defines what that is, and it most certainly states that the supply pipe does not meet that.
And two further points of reference. 7080 is a Minnesota rule, not state statute.
Okay.
We're not guided by state statute in this instance. The activity requires a permit to be done what has been done or needs to be fixed.
Okay. Any members of the board have any questions, comments for either staff, applicant? Any?
Yes, I do. I need some clarification here. So, yeah, it's on.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, when that system was originally put in, it was sized for a 4-bedroom. Is that correct?
It was oversized so we could build in the future, correct?
Okay, and so now you're building a 4-bedroom now, or
Correct.
now it doesn't satisfy the requirements because there's new requirements? Is that what we're saying?
Correct. Minnesota rule has changed. The tanking capacity requirements have changed since the time of that original installation, and therefore we have to require that the current rule requirements, current ordinance requirements are met when we issue permits. Therefore, additional tanking capacity would be required.
And if it was a minor permit, no increase in tanking would be required. A major permit requires the increase in tanking.
Yeah, and so I'm just spouting off here what's coming across my mind here. And so what the applicant has read about what's a minor and what's a major apparently is not clearly defined in any kind of documentation the county has. Would you agree with that?
Ordinance 422 defines minor repair,
Okay.
and anything that isn't defined as a minor repair is a major repair.
Okay, what can you read it to us? What does it say about a minor repair?
Sure. In section 3 of Ordinance 422, in section 3.2 definitions, minor repair states the repair or replacement of an existing, damaged, or faulty component, part of an SSTS that will return the SSTS to operable condition. The repair shall not alter the original area, dimension, design, specification, or concept of the SSTS. Repairs to sewage or pump tanks and or soil dispersal systems are not, our definition get cut off, but it should say, are not a minor repair.
So then what does it say about a major repair?
We don't define major repair because if it doesn't meet the definition of a minor repair, it is a major repair and requires permitting. So again, when you look at the definition, the repair or replacement of an existing damaged or faulty component, which there was not such until the home construction started, which was after the fact and self-inflicted. So it doesn't meet the definition of a minor repair.
So if the applicant would have damaged the pipe by accident, would that be considered a minor component?
I guess, you know, part of in my opinion, I would still not consider that a minor repair.
So there's some subjectivity here is what I'm trying to get at. What is a minor repair and what is not a minor repair? It's like, depends who you ask or how it happens is what I'm hearing.
Well, no, let me give you, if I could, examples of minor repairs to a system would be like replacing the sewage effluent pump in the tank. The pump burns out, you hire a service provider or an installer to come back and replace that pump. It gets put in, same floats, same settings, all that. It goes right in, right? Change out a faulty high-level alarm switch, something like that. Those are minor repairs. A drop box lid gets collapsed in the drain field, so you dig it up and you get it reset. Okay. Those are minor repairs. When you structurally change a component of the system, it's a major repair.
So that's your interpretation of it. And I guess what I'm saying here is, I think the documentation for the county needs to be more specific and more precise, so we know what a minor one is and what a major one is. So that's where I'm at. So that's the only questions I have.
Any others? Comments?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong.
Yep.
I pre-apologize for calling you Madam Chair just from the last 3 years of saying that automatically. If I say that. So on the image that's currently shown, where are they proposing to put the supply line?
You want me to take that one?
Whoever
Well, I haven't seen your site, so I don't know. I'm assuming you are constructing where the red box is. That's the indicated new home.
Yeah.
So he's
Yep,
placing
pretty
the new
roughly.
home right over the top of the existing
Yep.
pump line.
And we're at second story right now, so yeah, it has been lowered and the house has been constructed.
So where are you proposing to put the supply line?
It went down. Same location.
So still underneath the house?
Yeah. Trying to meet code. Trying to meet ordinance.
So yes, so, well, I'm confused. So if you're not moving the supply line, then what is it that's changing?
The county staff has taken the location and adding vertical to it, even though there's nothing vertical in the permit. There's no elevations taken in when it's originally constructed. You get a starting point and an end point, and then it doesn't look at the elevations of that pipe further. And then they are saying that the supply pipe is part of the pump tank, so that it cannot fall under the 7.2.2 minor repair, which, as I've stated, the state does not consider it part of the tank.
I'm sorry, I don't follow. What is it that's changing? What is it that you want to change that the county is not allowing you to change?
The pipe was up here, now it's down here. Like, can she see me?
No. Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Board Member DeLong, the modification that apparently has been made already is that the pipe elevation for the supply line from the tank to the drain field has been lowered in elevation from its original installation.
So it's basically on the same line, it's just deeper into the ground.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if it's in the same area, the same dimension, it sounds like it's the same design of the septic system, the same specification, and the same concept. The only difference being that it's lower in the ground than anything else. To me, that sounds like it's not, well, I also know that I believe that it's a repair, because you're not repairing something that was broken, you're replacing something. I don't see anything in the list of definitions that say replacement. To me, I don't see anything broken here that was damaged or faulty and that's being repaired. I just see something being replaced.
And I'd agree with you, Jill. You know, to me, when I read the definition of the minor, if you are replacing something for a change in purpose, really, it's, you know, the change in purpose is that it's going with a different house. You know, you're building a brand new house. You know, I don't look at that as, minor repair.
I also want to state, you know, it sounds like the existing system from 15 years ago is not enough septic tank capacity, but exceeds the requirements for the pump tank capacity and the drain field capacity. Additionally, I'm just looking at this site picture, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the existing dwelling that's to be removed was too close to the water, and it sounds like the new construction is further away from the water, probably to meet requirements on shoreland overlay and from the ordinary high water line. Is that correct?
Or whoever.
Mr. Chair, Board Member DeLong, no, I don't get too involved in the construction site part of this aspect, but I do believe you would be correct. It is pushed back. However, I don't know if it's a good observation, but I don't know if the observation is pertinent to the definition of and the matter at hand, whether it's a minor repair or not. But I do applaud your observation of that. So.
And what I
Well,
see, go ahead, Jill.
Oh, sorry. We just see lots of variance applications because pre-existing buildings were built too close to waterways, and now we have better requirements to move. If you're going to replace the building, you have to replace it much further away from the waterway. So to me, keeping that in mind, if they had to move the building further away from the waterway because of that, because they wanted to meet the new requirements for shoreland overlay and all that fun stuff, that leads me to be more forgiving, just personally more forgiving for this, because they're already trying to do something better for the county and for our resources. So that's just my opinion. Go ahead, Bonnie.
What I was going to say is, I think, I kind of agree with a lot of what people have said. But when I look at the request or the appeal in front of us is just basically to determine, is this a major or a minor repair? Regardless, I think it's granted, it's really good that the house has moved back and those things are happening. But I think what's before us to decide is it a major or minor repair?
Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
Mr. Krippner, if he's just replacing the tank, which no longer meets the requirements, does he need a permit for that? And do you have a permit for that?
I wasn't planning on replacing the tank, so I do not have a permit for it. If this board says that I have to, then I do have to get the permit, and that's what the 6-page agreement was.
Okay, because it has the feet in the requirements, and your current tank doesn't meet the current standards, correct?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Schwegel, correct. In today's code, the tanking capacity that's in place that would be hooked up to Mr. Houston's or the applicant's new home does not meet the sizing requirement for a 4-bedroom home. Today's requirement would be for a 1,500-gallon capacity septic tank and a minimum of a 500-gallon pump tank. With that, I would just, if I could address one further thing, the letter that was provided from Montab Incorporated, I do agree with Mr. Haig's assessment. It's a professional opinion that the current septic configuration meets the requirements and intent of the original design, but not that no changes are necessary. It met the original design criteria. That's why it was issued a COC, or a certificate of compliance, at that time. As we live life and ordinances and regulations change, we have to fall in place with the new requirements. Therefore, if this board decides that this action is not a minor repair and would require a permit, that is where the additional tanking capacity becomes relevant and would be required.
It should be noted that if I just tore down the existing house and built in that same spot, this house, I would not need to replace the tank because I would not be impacting the supply line at that time then.
What's your house now? How many bedrooms?
3.
Okay, and you built or are building a 4-bedroom,
right?
Which requires the bigger tank.
If we tore down the 3-bedroom and built the 4-bedroom on that location and did not impact that supply line, staff has stated that we would not need to increase the tank size because it would be grandfathered in. So this all gets down to, because I'm impacting the supply line and they're making it a major permit, then I need to increase the tank size.
So I'm confused again now. So if this guy were building a new house somewhere, he couldn't put this septic system in that's on that property right now. Wouldn't comply, right? Is that true?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Fiedler, if he was building a new house, regardless of where the new house was going,
yeah,
if he was to rebuild the system that exists today for that new home, it would not meet the sizing criteria for a 4-bedroom home. The drain field would be large enough. The tanking capacity would be shy.
Okay. So now take us to where we are today. He's building a 4-bedroom home there. So in order to bring that in compliance, that system, what part of it does he have to change?
The drain field remains large enough.
Yeah.
Because it was overbuilt originally. The tanking capacity is shy. And needs, he would have choices as to remove the tank and put in one larger tank big enough for all of it. He could add a second tank to the existing tank. That would be, that would be a discussion between himself and a designer to create the necessary design paperwork for the permitting requirements.
Mr. Chair and members, on 1117, Shelley does state that the compliance inspection that was completed fulfills the requirements of this section, allowing for the new home to be hooked to the existing system. They are stating that it's basically governed by two sets of rules, right? If you build a new septic system, it has to meet this criteria. But if you build a new house and hook into an existing system, that's completely fine. It's simply because I am impacting the supply pipe because I moved my house back that I have to put in a new tank.
You're confusing me more and more.
Welcome to county ordinances.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm going to ask
Person
staff.
controlling the display, go to the appeal FOF sheet, please, just so I can see what it is we need to consider. Thank you.
Ken?
If you were planning a new line, would you allow a person to put the line under the house? I know in years past people were running the lines under a deck, and that wasn't allowable. Here it's going under the house. If something happened, would they have to tear the whole house apart to get at it?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Mossman, is it technically allowed in code? In the language that's in rule right now, yes, it is allowed to run under a home. In prior iterations of Minnesota rule, it prohibited it. In my personal professional opinion, it's a terrible idea for the exact purpose you stated.
That's just why I'm asking.
As a licensed engineer who designs septic or sewer systems for a profession, we've done this many times. It happens all the time.
Okay, so
All right. Is there anything else? Any questions anybody had? Seeing none, this is kind of a different deal than we usually do. Since this is an appeal here, I think we just go to these 4 questions here that we have. Is that correct? The way to do it? Yep. And so starting, the first question that we ask is, what is the intent of the zoning ordinance as it relates to this specific appeal? So the intent of the zoning ordinance as it relates to this appeal.
This is Jill DeLong. I believe the intent of this zoning ordinance is to ensure that if major parts of the sewage treatment system are changed, that they are kept up to code. So if they had to replace a pump tank and it was 15 years ago, the pump tank was smaller than what ordinances require now, we would have required them to replace it with a larger size. My understanding is that if things needed to be replaced, that it should be brought back up to code, is my understanding.
Anybody else? Additional comments for that? Okay. And we don't vote in this individually, just the whole document we vote on, correct? At the end, right? Okay. Number 2, what is the intent of the comprehensive plan as it relates to this appeal?
I believe the comprehensive plan is that we have septic systems that are capable of sized appropriately so that we can ensure that groundwater and other safety concerns are considered.
All right, anybody else to add on to that as well? If not, let's go to number 3. What sections of the ordinance apply to the subject at hand?
I believe ordinance 422, sections 3.2.21.
And you want to give that out for us, what you can find there? So we've got that. Anybody else? All right, going with that. Number 4, the final question. Has staff properly applied the provisions of this ordinance to the activity in question? Why or why not?
Well, I believe that when we're looking at did staff appropriately determine that this was not a minor repair? And looking at all of the information provided, I believe that it's not a minor repair because it didn't repair or replace any minor damage or faulty component. It relocated the pipe rather than just repairing or replacing damaged components.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I believe there's enough ambiguity in the county documentation for someone to determine whether it's minor or major.
Very good. Anybody else here for us? Any comments?
I believe that, this is Jill DeLong, I believe that the replacement, I believe it does not alter the original area of the treatment system. It does not alter the dimension, the design, the specification, or the concept of the treatment system. So to me, it falls under that definition.
Okay. Can we have a motion to either support or deny this appeal?
Jill DeLong, I move that we uphold the appeal request.
Okay. Let's start out with roll call. Ken?
And before you do that, can you clarify when she says uphold the request? So is she upholding that?
Yeah, do you want to clarify just to make sure on that one? Yeah, that's a very good point. You want to make sure you clarify.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Bonnie at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you please clarify your motion, whether you're upholding the county's determination or the request of the applicant, which you would be supporting?
I am supporting the request of the applicant.
Okay. That helps. There we go. Thank you. So do we have a second to her motion to support the appeal?
I will second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. So, okay. Roll call vote. All right. Ken?
Nay.
Bonnie?
Nay.
Jill, it was a yes. Okay. Myself. No. And then got Rob. Nope. Okay. George, it was a yay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Therefore, it does appear here that the nays have this, so the appeal is. Oh, yep. Correct. Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion to support the county's determination of that this is not a minor repair request.
Go ahead. Roll call matter. We're good to go with this. Roll call. I'll call roll call to support the
Oh.
county's decision.
We have to have a second. I'll second
Yep,
it.
Ken, correct. All right, Ken, yes,
Yes.
correct. Lonnie? Yes. I'm a yes.
Yeah.
And then
Nay.
nay. And then Jill?
Jill?
I will say nay because just thinking about after the fact findings, we have to consider some things. I know this isn't an after the fact finding, but one of them is, are the county's benefits outweighed by the applicant's burden if the applicant were required to comply with the ordinance? And I don't know that the county's benefits in this case outweigh the applicant's burden. So I am a nay.
Okay. So it appears here that the motion to uphold the county's decision is indeed approved. So thank you very much for your time here this evening, and I think you can talk to staff at some point about the business that goes forward. Thank you very much for being here
Thank you, board.
tonight. All right, next on our agenda for this evening, to consider a request from Gary and Lynn Olson from Avon, Minnesota, from section 5.1.2C and 10.211A of Stearns County Land and Zoning Ordinance number 439 to construct an addition onto a legal non-conforming principal structure that will be ahead of the established building line. And so the said ordinance requires additions to the non-conforming principal structure to be landward of the established building line, affected property 103A of Lot 1, Cedar Knoll Plot 2, part of Government Lot 3, Section 31, Track 126 North, Range 30 West, Holding Township, and then the property address is 38737 Tamarack Lane in Avon, Minnesota. And can you state your names and address for the record, please?
Gary Olson, 38737 Tamarack Lane.
Lynn Olson.
And same address, right? All right, and then we'll kick it over to staff for their report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Some of you will probably remember this request. A couple of you newer members probably won't, because this was tabled from a previous request. A little background information. The applicants currently own Lot 1 of Cedar Knoll Plat 2, and part of Government Lot 3, Cedar Knoll Plat 2, was platted in 1966. The tract contains a lot area of 44,862 square feet, with 14,137 square feet of it being between the lake and the road. The current impervious lot coverage for the portion of the property between the lake and road is 23.8%, according to the survey provided by the applicant. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in 2020. There is an existing 2,104 square foot residential dwelling with attached garage and a 220 square foot deck that were permitted and constructed in 1985. According to the Stearns County Assessor's records, a 360 square foot framed screen porch was constructed in 2008. There are no permits on file for the porch addition. The existing dwelling has a crawl space at 1134.25 that is not meeting the regulatory flood protection elevation of 1138.25. The structure may be continued, including through repair, replacement, restoration, maintenance, or improvement up to 50% or less of the current market value. The current market value for the structure is $175,700. The existing structure may be improved up to $87,850. The proposed addition that is requested right now has a work and materials estimate for $68,548. This item was tabled from September 2021 Board of Adjustment meeting to revise their original request. The property is in the shoreland and floodplain overlay district of Two Rivers Lake, which is classified recreational development. Two Rivers is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients and mercury in fish. The subsurface sewage treatment system was installed in 1985 and 2020. The system is certified compliant. The current impervious lot coverage is 23.8%. The proposed impervious lot coverage when the project is complete will remain at 23.8%. Holding Township, Friends of Two Rivers Lake, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. I do not have any correspondence. I believe we might have one or two people who are on video that might have correspondence for this request. And I apologize, I forgot to ask before I started this, have you guys had a chance to visit the site? And if so, could you let us know? Okay, great. That's all that I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And then, do you want to go with that? Okay, so we've got the public testimony coming up. Did you want to speak to this?
Yes, so, yeah, it's an addition, but it's actually replacing a three-season porch that's already there. That was there when we purchased it. And so the variance is because it's a few feet, a couple feet over the building line. And I thought I saw a picture earlier showing the first request, so we downsized it significantly to get under that 50% of the value of the home. Yeah, that was what we wanted to do. It had a second level, and that's the plan now. But and then a couple slides further, there's a picture of the existing. The existing is 3 seasons, so if it's 20 below outside, it's 20 below in the 3-season porch. We can't use the space. And then in the summer, it's a nice room, but I can barely stand in it. The ceiling is like right here. So what we're really requesting to do is just raise that ceiling a little bit and put some windows in, and so we can heat it and use it year round. I'm a year from retirement, and we want to make it our permanent residence. The square footage is actually only 1,380 square feet. It's the living space is 46 by 30, so it's 1,380, and this would add 360 square or 320 square feet to make it 1,700. Yeah, there's what's existing. Well, you've seen it. So the footprint would be exactly the same.
And you had some people to testify to this as well, correct?
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, he's our neighbor.
Yeah, Charlie is on the.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh.
Hi, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm Charlie Plaisance. We're the neighbors as you're looking at it. We're to the right.
And Charlie, can I get your address for the record, please?
My home address?
Yes.
18630 Buchanan Street, Northeast, East Bethel.
Thank you. And continue on. I just needed that for the record.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and we're fine with it. You know, as far as that line of sight thing, it wouldn't hinder seeing the lake, and that's really what matters. As we look out over towards their property, all we see is the lowland there to the left or to the right, past Ponick. So they could go out pretty far, and it still wouldn't hinder us at all as far as our enjoyment of the property.
Very good. Anything else you have to add, or?
Just that, yeah, we support it, and if there's anything that we can do to help them, that we'll do it. And you know, so.
Thank you. And then was there one other? No, not making it through? One in the same, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any questions that members of the board? Any audience, does any audience members also have any comments for the board at this time? If you do, come out here to the podium for public testimony. If there is nobody, any board members have any questions about this?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong.
Yep, Jill.
Question for staff. On the image that's shown with the line of sight, that red line, on the Panics property, why does the red line go to the corner of their house and not to the portion that's sticking out closer to the lake?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the portion that you're seeing that is closer to the lake is actually a deck. So if you were on site and you happen to look that way, that is a deck. It's not like a screened-in porch. It's not a home addition or anything like that. It's just a deck with a cover, and we don't use a deck with a cover for building line.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then you had a question?
Yeah, question for staff. So what do you disagree with here? If they wanted to change this, footprint doesn't change, they just want to make it a 4-season versus a 3-season. What's the opposition from the county?
So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the need for the variance, if you look at the existing, this is the existing addition that was put on. That was put on without a permit, and that is where they're proposing to put this new addition. And that is ahead of this pink line, this building line that we have here. And so because it's going ahead of that building line, that's their need for the variance and why they're coming in front of you.
Okay, so were the applicants, is it their fault that no permit was gotten or not? Who didn't do a permit?
It would have been a previous owner.
Okay.
But
So-
regardless, even if that wasn't on there right now, and they wanted to do this addition, they would be in front of you today because it is ahead of that building line.
Okay, I guess my point is, it's almost like we're penalizing the applicants because they didn't get a permit, and it's not their fault. And so they're in my mind, they're not changing the footprint of their structure at all. Is it screened in now?
It's enclosed with storm windows.
Okay.
It's not insulated.
Right.
I think it was a deck, and then I think they put a cover top over it, and then I think they put the storm windows in as a part of like a 3-stage improvement over a few years.
So right now it has a floor, it has walls, it has a roof. The
Yes.
only thing that it doesn't have is insulation and HVAC to it.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Bonnie?
And Mr. Chair, I believe the last time that you were here and when we tabled it, at least for me, I think it was like you're like 3.5 feet past the building line. To me, that was not a big deal. I didn't feel that was the thing. I think that brought us concern was the letter from the was it the DNR that talked about the floodwater line. Have you had any contact with the DNR or any other change in your plan or anything regarding their statements?
Well, yeah, we downsized the project to stay under that 50%, so then we wouldn't have to bring everything up to the current code.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is just so that for the record it can show that that's
Sure.
why it was tabled and carried over, and that you have addressed that. So
Yes. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on the board?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, and then you gotta ask the audience, right?
You already did.
Yeah, I did that. We're good to go. Can I have a second?
Jill DeLong, I'll second.
Okay, very good. Motion and a second, and the public hearing is closed. So are there,
Then we do.
more questions, finding of facts? Okay, we're good to go. So number one, we're going to start out here. The proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located. Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, yes, it is allowed to have a addition built onto a residential building.
Is there anyone that disagrees with that from Jill? Okay, we're good to go for number one. Number one is a yes. Number two, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls and any related ordinances, yes or no?
I believe the intent of the ordinances is to make sure that we're not significantly moving the building line for neighboring properties, and that we are looking out for contamination of the lake as far as runoff. The roof is currently there, so it's not going to change the runoff that's currently there. And if it changes the building line of the neighboring properties, it's going to be very minimal, because this is only they're only going 3.5 feet beyond the building line. So I think it would meet the concerns of the comprehensive plan.
Bonnie's got a yes for us. Anyone in opposition to that? Hearing none, that'll be a yes for number two. Number three, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, yes, under Lakeshore living policies, living under living goals, number 3, to support housing options that give people in all life stages and of all economic means viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes.
Jill gave us a yes for that. Anyone in opposition of that? That being said, number 3 is a yes. And number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner.
Mr. Chair, yes, I believe that they are.
Okay, we have a yes for that. Anybody, any further for that? Okay, a yes for number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner.
I would say yes, being that the current porch was put on by the previous owner.
Okay, we have a yes for number 5. Any other comments for that? Okay, number 6, the variance if granted maintains the essential character of this locality.
It's not going to change the character of the community there.
Correct. That's pretty common in that area from what I remember. So any other comments over for that one? And number 7, the final one, the need for the variance includes more than economic considerations.
I don't believe economics were a major part of the request.
Okay, anybody else for the comment with that? A yes for number 7. Do we have anybody that wants to make a motion for this?
I'll move to approve the variance.
Okay, make a motion to approve that. Do we have a second for this?
I'll second it.
Oh, no, okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. And roll call for this, I assume. Okay, I'll just go through everybody again. George?
Yay.
Jill?
Yay.
Rob?
Yay.
Bonnie?
Yay.
Myself is yay, and then Ken.
Aye.
All right, the motion is approved. Thank you very much for being here. All right, we now move to number 3 to hear a request from Julie Glens of Albany from sections 10.2, 11A, 1A, and 10.212B2 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to leave as constructed a guest cottage addition that covers more than 700 square feet of land surface. Said ordinance does not allow a guest cottage to cover more than 700 square feet of land surface. Affected property is 9 91.75A, Government Lot 3 and 4, Section 25, Tract 125 North, Range 32 West, Oak Township, and the property address is 25947 County Road 174 in Albany. And then can I get your names and address for the public record, please?
Julie Glens, 25947 County Road 174, Albany.
Okay.
Jeremy Glens, same address.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And kick it over to staff for their report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start out asking, have all the board members, any board members, been able to visit the site and do so? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the staff.
Sorry, I forgot to turn on my microphone. Okay, let's try this. The applicant is requesting to leave as constructed a 16 by 24 guest cottage addition that, when combined with the existing structure, covers 1,080 square feet of land surface. Said ordinance does not allow a guest cottage to cover more than 700 square feet of land surface. The applicant currently owns a meets and bounds tract in Oak Township. The property is in the A80 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in 2014. The total lot area of the property is 91.75 acres according to county records. In 2015, a 24 by 29, 696 square feet guest cottage was permitted and constructed. 2019, a 16 by 24, 384 square foot guest cottage addition was constructed without a permit. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Sand Lake, which is classified recreational development. Sand is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients. The guest cottage is serviced by an existing subsurface sewage treatment system. The system was certified compliant by a licensed septic inspector. Impervious lot coverage is not a consideration for this request. Oak Township, Sauk River Watershed District, and the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. And we do not have any additional correspondence with this application.
And would you care to comment on this variance application?
Yes, we, if anybody's looked at it, we put a 3-season porch basically over the patio is what we did for the addition. Had we known that we needed a permit, we would have gotten one or tried to get one previously. I guess that's what we're just asking for.
Sure.
This to be granted, I guess. But.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Anybody in the audience at all want to comment on this? Anybody? Anybody? If not, questions from board members for the applicants and/or staff.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, question for staff, please. Could the staff clarify what the difference between a guest cottage is and a residential structure?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the guest cottage is a secondary residential dwelling on a property that's allowed based on the square footage of the property. It's held to certain size restrictions to keep it in that cottage sort of character so that it doesn't become an additional dwelling in an area where the dwelling residential densities don't allow. So in the A80 zoning district, they would be allowed one dwelling. This would be in addition to that as a cottage.
Any?
Thank you. So is there a residential structure on that property?
Yeah, they live on that property.
You cut out there, Jill.
Amazon
Can you repeat
there.
that? Your mute's on, I think.
Yeah.
Is she frozen? No.
I asked, is there a residential, is there an actual home on the property as well?
Yes, there is.
All right, anybody else?
I guess I just have a comment. You know, in 2015, when it was built to almost exactly the maximum of what a cottage, you know, could cover. And that was permitted. And so then I'm just, if the applicant could comment then why they, you know, didn't seek a permit when they added on to that structure, knowing that, you know, they'd reached their limit.
I guess we didn't know that we couldn't have a roof over the patio. I guess that's all it was, after we built it, you sit outside in the patio, it was very hot. It faces the south. And we came up with the idea to put the roof over it. First it had screen windows. Screen windows obviously they don't work very well, so we put regular windows in it. But had we known that we needed a permit, we would have obviously came here first and before we did it, obviously.
So I have a couple of questions for the staff, I guess. How was this discovered?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I believe it was discovered as a vacation home rental that came up and we found to not be permitted as such. So in seeking a permit for that, then this addition was found as well and found to be unpermitted.
So if this forum denies this request, do they have to tear it off? What happens? I'm new to the board. I'm asking silly questions, I guess.
That would be an option to have the addition removed.
I have a question for staff. What if they were to, you know, the property is 80 acres. What if they were to separate the cottage as a separate parcel? They wouldn't then need to you know, tear down that part of the building. Is that correct? Or
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the property isn't large enough to be subdivided into two properties. There's only one available building entitlement based on the zoning density in the A80 zoning district with only 91 acres.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for us?
I have a question, and this goes to Shelley. If they sold off 80 acres and there was only 11 left, wouldn't that 11 have a building entitlement?
Mr. Chair, Member Mossman, that is something that would be considered as a part of the process, and so they wouldn't be allowed to subdivide without the additional density that they would need. So yes, they have more. If they have 91 acres, they have over 80 acres, but there's no, it's not large enough over to gain the next unit of density. So you don't get to sell off 80 and have a residual and get another credit.
And we've never come up with things like this. That's just why I'm asking.
Yeah. So it doesn't allow for that density in this particular case. They could certainly seek a credit that they could purchase from someone else, some land, but that's a lot of land to make up for this particular situation. Or they could, you know, remove that portion that would put it back into compliance with a guest cottage. That'd be another option.
Would they have to buy the land or just the credit?
Credit. They would not have to necessarily buy land.
They wouldn't have to buy another 70 acres of land. They would just.
They could get
a building entitlement
correct.
From a neighbor.
Purchase of a building entitlement would be an option. Or if someone's generous enough to give them one, I guess they could give them one too.
Any other?
I have a question for.
But I believe the variance can be granted and it can stay too. Is that correct? Is that
correct? That's why you're here. Is
right,
that
right.
Your request is for a variance to allow for the thing that's out of compliance.
Yeah.
The question was related to subdivision and could they subdivide to get both allowed? And the answer is not under the current circumstances because they don't own enough land area.
Yep, you had a question?
Is there any mitigation that can be done if they're allowed, if we give them the variance, they're still required to do what?
Mr. Chair, Member Schwegel, there's no mitigation proposed for this property as it doesn't pertain to any lake setback, so there's not an impact that is mitigatable that we would be looking for mitigation for or recommending mitigation for. They meet the 100-foot ordinary high setback.
But would they have to come in and buy a permit after the fact?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, any?
And I just have one last comment, that, the applicants indicated that it was just they didn't know that they needed to get a permit for this. I guess my concern, though, is going forward with kind of, then that kind of lets people know out there, well, if we go ahead and just do what we want and then come in later and say, I didn't know. And I'm not saying they did, I believe you that you didn't know. But I'm just saying for the general public, then they'll come in and say, well, I didn't know. And then they'll just build whatever they want, even though it's not permitted. They'll build it twice the size of what they wanted and just claim that they didn't know. So setting a precedent, and I know we don't necessarily set precedent, but yet it does send a message to the public of what you can and can't do. So that would be my concern.
More questions from anybody? If there aren't, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Right. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. So the public hearing is closed. So let's move now to our findings of fact. So number one, is the proposed use allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong. This is currently zoned in A80, and a guest cottage is allowed in A80 zone.
All right, we have a yes from Jill. Anybody have other opinions? If not, we'll go for a yes for number one. Number two, is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official control?
Well, I would need to say no because the intent of the official control is to limit the size of guest cottages. And according to county ordinance, a three-season porch or a covered patio, as they've done, would qualify as part of the cabin, which would exceed the 700 feet. So I would say no.
So Bonnie's a no for that. Do we have any opinions otherwise? If not, we'll go number two as a no. Number three, is the variance request consistent with the comprehensive plan?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I'm going to say no under Lakeshore Living Policies. Number three, to discourage the alteration of natural shorelands and the creation of impervious surface in nearshore areas.
Okay. We have a no from Jill. Any others with different opinions? A no for number three. Number four, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control?
Well, I would think a guest cottage near the lake is reasonable.
We have a yes for number four. Any other opinions?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong.
Yes.
I'm going to say no, in that the addition is more than half again the size of an allowed guest cottage. So that it's over 380 square feet larger, which is more than half the size of a permitted guest cottage. So I think that it's not reasonable.
Okay, so we have a yes from Bonnie and a no from Jill. I think it'd probably be best for us to go visit the rest of the board members' opinions on this. George?
I'd say no. Agree with Jill.
Okay. Rob?
I would say no.
Okay. Yes. I am a yes. And then Ken. Okay. So we have a majority here of the, oh wait, we're tied. No, we're 3-3. So what do we do? And that's fine. That's just kind of a statistical. Yep. Yep. All right. Number 5 is apply to the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner.
Mr. Chair, I would have to say this is totally created by the landowner. He built on the deck and then put in the windows and the roof and everything after, even though he didn't know, he did it. So
was always there. The
right.
concrete patio was always there.
It was
we
when
just covered
Yep,
it.
and so
when you did all the rest of it.
Yep, yep. And so during the finding of facts, we don't generally allow people to speak unless we might have a no, it's fine. Just for the record. So we have a no for that. Any other opinions for this? Okay, no for number 5. And number 6, will the variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
I would say yes. It's an extension onto the cottage. It's in harmony with what's already there, but it's out of compliance size-wise.
Okay, and so a yes for that. And then number 7, final question. The need for the variance involves more than economic considerations. Yes or no?
I don't think economics were the impetus for this.
Okay, and so we have gone through our 7 questions here. Do we want to have a motion made for this?
Mr. Chair, do you want to just state the ones that were a no vote for the whole board?
Yes, so correct. So a reminder for the folks here. So in order for a motion for approval for this project, all of the answers need to be in the affirmative for all 7 questions, and this did not happen in this instance. So we would be looking for a motion for denial for this variance.
I will move to deny.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll do a roll call just of everybody again. George?
Deny.
Jill?
Deny.
Rob?
Denied.
Bonnie?
Deny.
Ken?
Deny.
I'm a denial. And so with that, you can talk to the environmental services staff, and then we'll go forward from there. So thank you very much for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Okay, number 4 here, we are going to consider a request from Anthony and Elizabeth DiStefano from San Antonio, Texas, from section 10.211A of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a residential addition and a deck ahead of the established building line. Said ordinance requires a residential dwelling addition to be constructed landward of the established building line. Affected property 1.29A FRL 1.29A of S29W4 as per DB 274P 415 less part for Township Road, Section 29, Tract 123 North, Range 30 West, Wakefield Township, and that property address is 2001-705 Frostview Road, Cold Spring, Minnesota. And are these? Is this a virtual?
Yes.
Okay. And then so.
Good evening.
Yep. And then can you state your name and then your address for our record that is submitted here, please?
Yes. My name is Tony or Anthony DiStefano. My address is 1650 Wild Peak, San Antonio, Texas 78258.
Thank you. And then staff, for your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicants, sorry, I will start out with asking, any of the board members have had a chance to visit the site prior to the meeting? Thank you. The applicants are requesting a variance from section 10.2.11A of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a 23.58 foot by 26.44 foot, 604 square foot residential dwelling addition and a 10 foot by 40.58 foot deck ahead of the established building line. Said ordinance requires a residential dwelling addition to be constructed landward of the established building line. The applicants currently own a 1.29 acre meets and bounds property in Wakefield Township in the R1 zoning districts. Applicants purchased the property in 2020. In 1970, a 24 by 32, 768 square foot dwelling and 2 water-oriented structures were constructed prior to the official controls of Stearns County. 1974, a 30 by 48, 1,440 square foot dwelling addition was permitted and constructed. The existing deck was also constructed but was not listed on the permit. The residential dwelling is serviced by an existing subsurface sewage treatment system. A compliance inspection was completed on the system in May of 2020. The system was certified compliant by a licensed septic inspector. The proposed dwelling addition will slightly move the established building line towards the lake for the adjacent property owners. However, the existing shoreline impact zone setback is more restrictive. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Zumwalt Lake, which is classified recreational development. Zumwalt is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients. The current impervious lot coverage for the property is approximately 10%. The proposed impervious lot coverage when the project is complete will be approximately 11.9%. Wakefield Township, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. If the variance is granted, determine if mitigation as stated in the Minnesota State Statute 394.35 Subdivision 5 is required. And examples are listed on the staff report.
Very good. And so the applicants, do you have your contractor with you on the line?
Yes, we do.
I do have,
Yep,
Mr. Chair, I do have one item of correspondence here, and this is from John Rochline of the Sauk River Watershed District, the district administrator. It starts off, thank you for providing me with the meeting notice for Stearns County Board of Adjustment. I have reviewed the packet and find that Julie Glenn's and, I'm sorry, that is the wrong one. I apologize, but to sum it up, he's just requesting that they apply for a permit with the Sauk River Watershed District if they get their variance granted. So I do have a copy of that we can add to the file for the record.
Okay. Thank you. And now we can move to the applicants and your contractor. Applicants and the contractor, do you have any comments that you wish to give to the board? Any clarifications?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've been looking at this. This is a property that was owned by my wife's family for, as you can see in the data that the staff provided, for almost 50 years. And so, you know, it's not a property that we've used since obviously we live in Texas, but now that we've purchased it due to death of the family, you know, we've been trying to update it a little bit from its 70s era style and decor. And to include with our family, the family member who owned it before us was a single person. When she passed, we obviously purchased it, and we're a family of 5. And so the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom facility is a little difficult when we're all there, plus or minus any other family members that may visit. And so the hope was to update the existing structure, bathroom and kitchen areas, as well as add another bathroom and another living space, another bedroom, so that way we could a little bit more adequately fit into the structure there. And so as you can see, the property, the way that the structure is angled kind of gives us a peculiar building line to our neighbors. So when we try to fit the new addition into where it's at, which from a structural, aesthetic, and cost perspective is the simplest approach, it does exceed the building line. So, that's why we're here trying to see if we can get the approval for the variance to extend past it from 2 to 3 feet. My contractor, Craig Schoenberg's on the line too. I don't know if he's got anything to add or if there's anything additional you guys would want to hear from me.
I do not. You did a good job, Tony. Just like he's saying, it's the way the addition lays in there is the most cost-effective and simplest way to do the addition and achieve his goals.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this? Anybody at all? Gotta ask. It's a job. Anybody at all? If not, questions from the board members to staff or applicants?
I have some questions about how it exceeds the building line. Now, can you tell me if just the addition, not looking at the deck, but just the addition itself, how far does that exceed the building line?
Well, if you're looking at basically the black line that kind of juts out from the green line there in the front, that section is 2 feet in length. So from the westernmost edge of the drawing there by the green light, yes, right where you're at, that's about 2 feet. And if you extend it over probably another foot, foot and a half, so probably 2 feet to 3.5 feet would probably be the furthest parts past that building line.
Okay, and then can you tell me when you add the deck onto there, because the drawing we're looking at right now does not, well, I guess it does vaguely show the proposed deck, but how far would the proposed deck exceed the building line?
Well, two things. One is it would come out 10 feet, but again, I'm not a contractor, but my understanding was that, and it was talked about earlier, when you guys talk about building structures past the building line, that some of the decks don't necessarily count towards there. There was some other number about being 50 feet from the shoreline with a deck. So that 10 foot would be, I think, 54 feet from the shoreline. So we were trying to do a bigger deck. We have reduced the size to fall in line with the codes that I understand that we were trying to make that fit.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, question for staff. So in the report, it says that the existing shoreland impact zone setback is more restrictive. So can you talk a little bit about how the shore impact zone setback is more restrictive than the building sightline, please?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the shoreline impact zone setback extending to the east of the property, which is where the building line setback would be moved, is extending further shoreward than what the existing building line and the proposed new building line would be. So the shoreline impact zone is 50 feet from the ordinary high. This would be the building line would be less than that. So the shoreline impact zone would be more restrictive. So there would be no applicable change for the neighboring property.
Thank you. And then a question for the applicant. Did you receive the report from the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you read that report, was any of that things that you would be willing to look into to add for this project?
Yeah, absolutely. We are, which is why we're here. Obviously, we're more than willing to try to adjust in a reasonable way to facilitate our project, which would include, submitting to the buffer zones.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody on the board questions? Applicant, staff? If not, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I do have one.
Okay. Yep.
One question for the applicant and the contractor. So, how much square footage are you wanting to add to your structure?
This is about 600 square feet.
And I know you mentioned that you thought about alternatives. Can you talk about those alternatives a little bit more?
Yep. So, this was the third option that we are trying to pursue. The other two options we thought were going up a second story on the existing, if you go back to the building drawings or the site plan. So if you look at the house main floor, we explored going north or going vertical on that part to add the additional bathroom and bedroom. That would have required us to add more structural support to the main facility, to the main structure itself. So we had to go underneath there and kind of strengthen up the beams and probably pour some more concrete footings down there to support adding that next level above it. We also looked at trying to go above the garage section back there. When this garage was put in there, and again, it was before my time, they essentially poured a really weak slab. So essentially, if we wanted to do that route, we would have to tear up the entire existing slab and put in a much more reinforced slab to be able to support going vertical on that section as well. And so that's where we kind of arrived at this, where the section that we're trying to fit the addition into is already kind of in place. It would only require us doing a crawl space. And so that was the direction we were trying to do or go with, and also keep it aligned with the symmetry and the aesthetics of the existing cabin.
But having described all that, it is possible.
Yeah, I guess it is. It would be much more expensive. The garage part would be potentially the second best option, because again, if we went vertical on the main house floor, logistically in there, the way that the house, the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom are sitting right now, it would be cumbersome to kind of work around and get a stairwell in there. But I suppose we could do it if we absolutely had to and had the extra funds to do it.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, and the public hearing is closed. So with this, I look in front of me here, and there's several options for this. How do we want to approach this? Do you want to do all three at once, or because we've divided it before, I know, but it depends what the wish of the board is, I suppose. Yeah, we've got, well, 4 technically if one is denied.
You have three options. One is doing it both together, and the other 2 would be the 2 separate.
Correct.
So really kind of 2 options.
Yep. So what is the wish of the board there? Do you want to do the 2 together or the separately, or what is the preference for the board there?
I would be fine with doing both options, the addition and the deck, together as one finding.
These 2 and 2, okay.
I agree with Bonnie.
Yep. Was that a yes? Okay. Very good. So and is that okay with everybody? Okay. So we will do those, the addition, the deck there, and then so we'll do those together, okay? All right. So number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located.
Additions would be allowed on houses on Lake Shore, so that would be permitted.
Okay. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I believe it is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls. They worked very hard to minimize the amount of impact on the sight lines. It's a very minimal change, so I believe, yes, it is in harmony.
Okay, we have a yes for that. Any others? Okay.
I would disagree with that. It's beyond the setbacks, beyond the ordinance.
Okay. So we have divided opinions on that. So I'm just going to go through the whole roll of us again to get our votes on that. So George is a no.
No.
Okay. Jill? Yes. Right? Rob?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. And I'm a yes, so that is a yes for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, yes, under living, Lakeshore living policies, number 6 for expanding mitigation requirements for projects requesting to vary from lake setbacks to preserve the riparian environment and reduce erosion to enhance the water quality.
Okay, we have a yes from Jill for number 3. Bonnie?
And I'd like to add the comment that I would say yes to that one too, because they are willing to go ahead with the mitigation that was suggested by Soil and Water.
Okay, we have a yes for number 3. Any others of differing opinion? If not, we have a yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner.
Mr. Chair, I would say yes.
Okay. Well, yes for number 4. Anybody else? Okay. Number 5. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner.
Well, taking into consideration that the landowner, did look at other options that could avoid a variance, but some of those were not as feasible as this option, and they have minimized the amount of effects, so I would say yes.
Okay, so a yes for number 5. Anybody else of differing opinion? Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality.
I would say yes.
Okay, we have a yes for number 6. Everybody agree with that? And number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I don't believe economics were part of this discussion.
All right, we have a yes for number 7, and a reminder, all of the questions have been answered in the affirmative for this, so can we look for a motion for this? And then did we want to add that condition with from the
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong?
Yep.
I move that we approve a variance from section 10.2.11A2 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439 to construct a residential dwelling addition and deck ahead of the established building line with the condition that they also add the mitigation as suggested by the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District to add the vegetative buffer no-mow zone.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Just be sure to clarify the mitigation options as they were suggested or recommended to be a native buffer. And to clarify, is it to be a native buffer with new plantings, or is it to be a no-mow buffer of existing vegetation, so that that's clear to the applicant? And if it is to be a native buffer, is there to be financial guarantee associated with that?
Okay. And do we?
That's 125%.
125. Okay. Is that, Jill? Would you accept that into the motion that you've made?
Which one?
Yeah, which one?
Yes.
Property owner, is that all right with you guys? Is that a minute?
Which one?
Okay, Jill.
Yeah, there's 2.
Yep, there's the 2 there. That's for the debt.
It sounds like, from my reading of it, is that the financial guarantee is required if we require the no-mow vegetation buffer.
Native.
native planting would require a financial guarantee.
And then
No mow
applicant-
does not.
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding, Mr. Chair, my understanding would be that they'd have the option to either do the no mow with native planting buffers, or to just to implement a buffer. So one or the other, one with the native plants and one with just a no mow zone that's specified on the drawing.
And applicants, which what?
Mr. Chair, if I could, my preference would be the no mow zone, if that's acceptable with the motion by the board.
Jill? Do you wanna?
I'm okay with a no mow zone, not necessarily the native plant buffer. I'm okay with the no mow zone, but if the rest of the board has different conditions, I'm open to hearing them.
And Jill, I just have a question for your motion. Would that no mow zone then be as it's indicated in the drawing from Soil and Water, where they have the green lines on the drawing? Is that what you're looking for?
It should extend a minimum of 25 to 35 feet landward of the high water level on the lake and 10 feet landward of the lake on the east side. So how they recommend it. So the minimum of 25 to 35 feet.
Then I'll second her motion.
Okay. So we have Bonnie and Jill motion. Jill motion and Bonnie second. So George.
I'm a nay.
Okay. Rob?
Yay.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much for appearing for the board tonight.
Thank you, board.
Going now to agenda item number 5, to consider a request from Daniel and Constance Haig of Paynesville, Minnesota, from section 10.211A of Stearns County Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a dwelling less than 200 feet from a lake classified as a natural environment lake. Affected property 29.03A SE 49 West 4 less than S362 thereof, section 32 T112N, tract 122 North and range 31 West, Eden Lake Township, and then that address is kind of that 150th Street, Paynesville, not a real specific number assigned to that yet. So, and can I get your address here for us? Perfect. And then kick it off to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll start off by asking, has any of the board members been able to visit the site? Thank you. The applicant is requesting a variance from section 10.2.11A of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a 60-foot by 80-foot residential dwelling with a 9-foot by 16-foot covered patio 100 feet from the ordinary high water level of a lake classified as natural environment. Said ordinance requires a new residential dwelling to be constructed 200 feet from the ordinary high water level of a lake classified as natural environment. The applicant currently owns a meets and bounds tract in section 32 of Eden Lake Township. The property is in the A40 zoning district, and the applicant purchased the property in 1986. The property is in the shoreland overlay district of an unnamed lake, which is classified natural environment. The lake is not on the impaired waters list. A preliminary design for a subsurface sewage treatment system has been submitted with the variance application. Impervious lot coverage was not a consideration of this application. An alternative to this request would be to construct the dwelling in a location that meets the ordinary high water level setback of 200 feet. Eden Lake Township, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. If the variance is granted, determine if mitigation, as stated in the Minnesota state statute, is required. Examples of the mitigation are listed below. I do have one piece of correspondence that came in from the Eden Lake Town Board, and the Eden Lake Township Board would like to submit correspondence for the Daniel and Constance Haig Variance requesting scheduled for 1/27/2022. The Eden Lake Township Board has no concerns and is in agreement with their request. Respectfully submitted, Stacy Thielen, Clerk, Eden Lake Town Board. That's all I have.
Very good. Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this? Yes. Coming up to the podium, and then state your name and address for the public record before you begin testimony. Thank you.
This is Robert and Libby Payne. We live at 24063 150th in Eden Lake, or actually Paynesville, excuse me. We live right adjacent. They want to propose a huge structure that will be looking right out our back window. We'll be looking right at the back of this building. We just have a few concerns about it being too close to the lake. Current water conditions are good from what we understand. To protect the lake, we can't see how the structure would be, how do I read this here? Why can't the structure be downsized to meet the proper setback? Why can't the variance be given on the back west side of the property to adhere to the 200-foot setback of the lake? It's our understanding the building is 60 by 80 by 30 foot tall. So we're under the understanding that a building of that size could only be 25 feet if it's, so it either has to be 25 feet and 200 feet back, or is that how you wrote that?
Well, our understanding is that the state's requirements are 25 feet height, and that the township wanted some flexibility, and so they gave that flexibility of 30 feet with the understanding that more restrictions would have to come somewhere else, and that's where the setback of 200 comes in. So our feeling is if they get this variance, they're getting both, they're getting both exceptions. And we are concerned about the lake. I talked to DNR. Environmental lakes are more susceptible to development, and they're harder to come back if they've been damaged. So that's a concern. We would like to keep the lake as it is. We just moved there. This is our home. This is our retirement. I'm getting emotional, so go ahead.
Settle down. Yeah, so this is what we bought this property for, was to retire here. We fell in love with it right away when we looked at it. There's some things that our realtor didn't quite inform us of that we've just recently found out about Daniel's easement. But most of all for us, it's the fact that a building of that size, to take all this trees, they say they won't, you won't be able to see it with all the trees. Well, how much of that are you going to have to clear cut to put the building in, to put the septic in, to put the driveway in, and then their garage door will then we'll be looking right at the back of their garage. Big overhead door.
And the building size is not consistent with the rest of the area. The other buildings are very small. This is a huge building. And when speaking to the DNR, they even said it's an awfully large building for that size lake.
And we just had some questions. Maybe these aren't pertinent, but is this going to be a permanent residence? Are there any plans for renting it for any other purposes other than just using it? How long do we have to put up with construction, traffic, noise, dirt?
If it's approved.
Right. Who will be responsible for any damages for the property, for our property, or the construction or the easement of the drive? And then who is responsible for ongoing maintenance of ingress, egress drive, and should we have something in writing?
The other thing that we're requesting is, because it was just brought to our attention that he does have an easement on our property. We were not told this, in a disclosure.
in the sale of the property. This just came to light a few days ago. So we are asking if there's any way that maybe this could be moved to next month so that we would have more time to look into this and know what this means with somebody having an easement on our property. We're not familiar with that. And because we've just been notified of this, we don't know what that means. So our other request would be if this could be moved to next month so we would have more time to find out what this means and if we have any kind of recourse at all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart.
Staff.
Mr. Chair, there was a request to have the applicant and those giving testimony repeat their name and address.
Can you do that? Yeah, repeat your name and address again
Thank
for
you.
the record, please.
I'm Robert Payne. This is my wife, Dana Payne. We live at 24063 150th Street, Paynesville, Minnesota.
Thank you.
They requested me to give my address again.
Yep, correct.
Dan Haig, 14698 Cedardale Road, Paynesville, Minnesota.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now moving to questions from members of this board here.
I apologize. This is Jill DeLong. Staff, could you read or recap what the correspondence was? I missed what the core message was.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the correspondence was from Eden Lake Township, and the message was that the Eden Lake Township Board has no concerns and is in agreement with the request of the applicant.
Okay, thank you. And then another question for staff or the applicant. Is there a place on this parcel that they could build this size structure and meet the 200 feet setback?
Yes, there is, in the southwest corner, out in the middle of a CRP field, next to a cornfield.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, down in there.
This corner?
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, could I ask the applicant, is there a reason why then you didn't choose that location since that location would not require a variance?
Biggest reason is the power source comes in right from the west on the north border of the property. And my legal access to the property comes in from the north side. I'd have to carry on another quarter of a mile to get to that property or to the site. That's all CRP now. If I turn it into cropland again one of these years, or if I have to get rid of the CRP with all the problems there, and that's just, I don't want a pole shed out in the middle of a cornfield. And to get power down there and access to that part of the property is almost impossible.
Anyone else, Ken?
Mr. Chair, this goes to staff. They mentioned, the Paynes mentioned the easement, and I don't think at this point in time, from what I know, this easement's probably been in place for 40, 50 years, and there's nothing that they should have been notified by the realtor when they bought their property that there was an easement coming in the driveway and went around their property. So I guess we could delay it as long as we want, but they can't change the easement.
Correct.
I have a question for staff, Mr. Krippner. The map you have up there now, I might be wrong, but I don't see where the easement's on the Paynes property.
It's, yeah, the driveway on the west side comes in.
But that would be
yep.
an easement for the Paynes also.
Correct.
So it's not their property, it's an easement.
Yep.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question. I guess it's a comment. Since this is new construction and the requirement says 200 feet, I don't even know why we're debating the variance. For me, it's a non-starter. I mean, it's a non-constructed building, and it can be, the 200 feet setback can be accommodated.
Any other questions from anybody? The board? If not, looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion from Bonnie.
I'll second it.
Second, George. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Public hearing is closed. Now to our finding of facts here. Question number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, this is an A40 zoning district, and building a residential dwelling is allowed in A40.
Okay. We have a yes for number 1. Any others of opinions here? All right. So yes for number 1. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls.
Mr. Chair, I would say it will not be in harmony with it. It's not, it's totally against the existing ordinance, the 200 feet setback.
Okay. We have a no from George. Any other opinions that we have here?
I would agree with that, as, you know, they're only meeting half of what they're required. If it were, you know, near the 200 and just a little off, I think would be one thing. But, you know, this is you know, half of the requirement.
Okay. So no for number 2. Okay. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I'm going to say no under Lakeshore Living policies to number 1, limit the impacts of additional shoreland development by clustering housing away from shorelines using a conservation design approach.
Okay, we have a no from Jill for number 3. Anybody of othering or differing opinions? If not, no for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Yes or no?
I would say no, because there are other options on this property where they could meet the 200 setback, and it seems to be economic reasons why they, you know, don't want to, you know, use that spot. But economics wouldn't be necessarily something we can use to offer a variance.
Okay, and no for number 4. Board in agreement on number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. Yes or
no? Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I believe it is circumstances unique to the property such that the power is already in that location. There isn't power in the other locations of the property. It is a weird shaped lot where so much of it is the water. So I believe it is unique to the property.
We have a yes from Jill. Any differing opinions on the board at this time?
Mr. Chair, I would disagree with that. There are other options. It might cost more for power, et cetera, but it's not impossible.
Okay, so we have a yes from Jill, no from George. Let's get the votes from the rest of the board. Rob?
I would say no.
Okay. Bonnie?
No.
Ken?
No.
I'm a no. So no for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality.
Mr. Chair, I would say no, unless he puts it 200 feet, the proper setback. I'd say no.
Okay. No from George. Any differing opinions?
This is Jill.
Go ahead, Jill.
I want to agree with the no, especially considering the neighbor next door was already concerned about the size of the building being built there. So I believe it would not maintain the essential character.
Ken?
I would have to agree. There is nothing there now, so there really is no character to be going by.
That's true, yeah. So yes for number 6. And number 7, the need for variance involves more than economic considerations.
I would say no. Economics is what's driving the building in the upper northwest corner.
Agree.
I would agree.
Okay.
Power is cheaper. The road is cheaper.
Okay. And then so noting that a majority of this variance, the questions were a no, so we would be looking for a denial for this variance application.
I'll make a motion to for
Motion for denial from Bonnie. Do we have a second for that?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Okay. Second from George. All right. Remaining members. Jill?
No.
Rob?
No.
Ken?
No.
And I'm a no. Motion is denied, and then you can talk to Environmental Services staff at a later time about that. Thank you for being here tonight. Do you want to take a break for a few minutes? I move that we take about a 5-minute break. Just let everybody use the restroom, get some water, do whatever, and we'll be back. Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's what matters. Are you sure you don't want this job back? You can take it. All right, everybody's back. Let's get back to business. Number 6 here on our agenda, to consider a request from Barbara Carlson of New Ulm, Minnesota, from Section 9.9.9A of Stearns County Land and Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to reconstruct and expand a residential dwelling on an existing and new foundation less than 30 feet from the rear of the property line. Said ordinance requires a 30-foot setback to the rear property line. Affected property, 0.22A, beginning 219 is it square? Feet south of the northeast corner of Government Lot 6 and 1/6 in the Beach Tract 8, Section 29, Tract 122 North, Range 32 West, Paynesville Township, and then that property address is 15199 Coleman Lane in Paynesville, Minnesota. And is she on the WebEx for us, correct? And then Barbara, can I have you state your address for us, please, for the record? Barbara, you're on mute, I think. No? We're having a hard... Oh, dear. Oh. I don't think we heard Jill either. Jill? Jill, can we check your mic? No, I don't think.
That's all I can do.
Oh, there we go. You want to repeat your name and address for the record? We got you. We can hear you now.
Okay. It's 1412 Southridge Road, New Ulm, Minnesota.
Thank you so much. And then, Jeff, can we ask for your name and address for the record as well?
Jeff Evans, 15118 King B Drive, Paynesville, Minnesota.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. All right. And staff, can you give us your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask the members of the board if anyone has had a chance to visit the site. Thank you. Yep. The request from the applicant is to reconstruct a 432 square foot residential dwelling on an existing foundation and to construct a 452 square foot addition with a 6 foot by 26 foot covered porch, a 12 foot by 12 foot deck, and 12 feet from the rear property line. Said ordinance requires a residential dwelling setback of at least 30 feet from the rear property line. The applicant currently owns a meets and bounds tract that is approximately 0.22 acres. There is one residential accessory structure that is being removed. The applicant purchased the property in 2020. The existing subsurface sewage holding tank will need to be replaced as it is beneath the proposed addition. A subsurface sewage treatment system design and permit application was submitted in December of 2021 to place a new holding tank on the property where it meets setbacks to the proposed dwelling and to abandon the existing holding tank. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Coronis Lake on a non-riparian lot. The property is zoned R1. The applicant is proposing to remove an 8 foot by 12 foot addition on the northwest corner of the existing dwelling that is only 5.1 feet from the rear property line. The current impervious lot coverage is approximately 8.6%. The proposed impervious would be 13.7%. An alternative to the variance request would be to abandon the existing foundation and relocate the proposed dwelling to meet the rear property line setback requirements. Paynesville Township, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. There are no mitigation options proposed for this one as it is a non-riparian lot. And I do have a letter of correspondence from a Ken Havemeyer. I hereby wish to express my sincere approval regarding the attached request. I am 100% in agreement to do so. And the attachment that he provided was the notice that was mailed out to neighbors. And that is all I have.
Very good. Thank you. Any anybody in the audience here at all to speak to this? I don't think so, but I got to ask. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this? Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this? All right, since there's not questions, well, first of all, does the applicant wish to speak to this? And Jeff, do you have anything to say about this?
The only thing it would be is if the variance ain't granted, she'll have to get a variance from the setback from the road, because one way or the other, she will not meet the setbacks. So that's about the only thing with this property.
Did you have anything to say, Barbara, or add to that?
No, I do not.
Okay. Questions from board members? No questions?
Yeah, question
George.
for staff.
Yep.
Can you just go over what the setbacks are supposed to be from the road, et cetera?
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the board, this property is being zoned R1, has a 30-foot rear yard setback, which is indicated on the west property line, as it was determined that the entrance to the property was on the east on Coleman Lane. So when we determine rear setback, we determine that to be opposite of the entrance to the property. That would make the north and south line the side yard property lines, which have a 10-foot setback in the R1 zoning district. And then the setback to the road would be 63 feet to the center line or 30 feet to the road right-of-way, whichever is more restrictive. In this case, it appears that the center line road setback would be more restrictive, as the road as traveled does leave the road right-of-way. So we use a more restrictive setback there.
Anybody else?
Can I just ask, I think for a point of clarification, Brian, so the 30-foot setback, this is Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director, the Coleman Lane setback that's listed and shown on the site plan as 30 feet, is that what it's supposed to be, or should it be bigger than that?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Shelley Benson, that I believe is not restrictive enough compared to what should be listed based on setbacks. We could scale it out if we needed to.
Essentially double the setback from what's there?
Almost.
Yeah. So that would somewhere. That's 39 feet to that setback, so it would be somewhere in here. Can you see where I'm putting the cursor? It's approximately in there, which would be the required setback from the front portion or Coleman Lane.
And Mr. Chair, I have a question for the staff. Is the reason that that the houses on the other side, you know, you could visibly see that they were less than the 30 feet, is that because of the direction that they said it's not considered their backyard or their, you know, rear setback from that fence line? Or is it just because they were built so long ago that they didn't meet standards at the time they were built?
That's what my assumption
Yeah,
would
that's, Mr. Chair, members of the board, even if the rear lot line was the north line, it still wouldn't meet the 30-foot setback, but this structure has been in existence a little bit longer than the controls that regulate the 30 feet.
And what I had noticed was that it was probably in line with other homes in the area, even though it doesn't meet the setback.
Any other questions from anybody? If not, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Oh, yeah, one more question. Yep.
So the alternative cited here talks about abandoning the existing foundation and relocate the proposed dwelling. Is that totally start over? Is that what we're talking about?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, yes, that would be eliminating the existing foundation and then adding on to the new foundation that's being proposed for the addition.
Thank you. So if they basically tore everything out that exists now and started anew, they would be able to meet all the setback requirements?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, in the orientation that the structure is now, no, as we stated, the Coleman Lane setback is more restrictive than what's on the certificate of survey. It would take some reorientation and potentially modification of the building shape to meet the setback.
But it would be possible. You'd have to redesign it, et cetera.
We would have to revisit the survey and the plans of the structure to see if it would actually fit with what they've proposed for a structure.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Bonnie moves to close the public hearing. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Ken. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Moving to our questions here, beginning with number 1. The proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located.
Mr. Chair, I would say yes, it is. Sorry, Jill. I would say it is.
That's okay. It's zoned R1, and building a residential dwelling with an addition is allowed in R1 zone.
All right, we have a yes for number 1. Any differing opinions? If not, that's a yes. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls.
Mr. Chair, I would say it would not be because it's not complying with the setbacks.
Okay, a no from George. Any other opinions from board members?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I believe that it is in harmony. They're working to get as close to the inside of the lot as they can. There's a lot of old property there. The road isn't necessarily square. They're trying to meet as many setbacks as they can with existing foundation. So I believe it is in harmony.
Anybody else?
And I also would state that, part of the comprehensive plan is just to alleviate conflicts with other neighbors. I don't think this is going to cause any conflicts with other neighbors because this house would be kind of right in line with where, other houses lie. And in fact, when I looked around the neighborhood, the size of this house, what's proposed, the size is actually modest as what it's proposed because the house currently is so tiny, is not out of character with what else is there. And given the land size that they have to work with, this probably is a reasonable solution.
And I would agree with that. I'm very familiar with that area as well, and it would be a very reasonable solution, I feel, in this way to have it there. It fits the area very well, and kind of that back off area, it alleviates that conflict, I believe, as well, in that kind of that area over there. So we have a yes from me, a yes from Bonnie, a yes from Jill, a no from George. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And then Ken? Okay. So it's a yes for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I'm going to say yes under living goals number 3 to support housing options that give people in all life stages and of all economic means viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes.
Jill is a yes. Any differing opinions on the board? If not, a yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, I would say yes.
Okay. Any other opinions from the board on number 4? Okay. If not, 4 is a yes. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner.
Well, I think the size and shape of the property and the previous location of the existing house, was probably there before. That's what's causing the concern, not necessarily choices of the landowner.
So we have a yes from Bonnie, agreement on the board for yes for number 5. Okay. Yes for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality.
Mr. Chair, yes, I believe that it does.
Okay, we have a yes for number 6 from George. Everybody in agreement on that? Okay. And I feel it fits the area very well as well. And number 7, the need for the variance, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
I would say yes.
Okay. And I'd agree. I don't think economics are really part of this discussion at all. So I would agree with that. So with that, we have affirmative answers for all 7 of these questions. So can I have a motion for approval for this variance request?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion from Bonnie to approve. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, a second from Rob, and then a roll call for the remaining members. George?
Nay.
Okay. Jill?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I am a yes. The variance for this construction is granted. Thank you for your time tonight. And Jeff, I guess you got to stay in the hot seat. All right, and so now we move on here to our final item, variance item for us this evening, which is to consider a request from Clark and Cynthia, is it Opdahl? Of Blaine, Minnesota, from sections 9.99A and 10.211B and 10.217B of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to leave as constructed a residential dwelling and a water-oriented accessory structure less than 10 feet to the property line and the water-oriented accessory structure less than 10 feet from that ordinary high water level of the lake classified general development. Also to construct a second-story addition on the existing dwelling less than 10 feet to the property line on a lot with an impervious surface coverage that exceeds 25%. Said ordinance requires a residential dwelling and the water-oriented accessory structure to be 10 feet from the side of the property line and that water-oriented accessory structure to be 10 feet from the ordinary high water level of a lake classified general development, and the lot shall not exceed 25% of the impervious surface coverage. Affected property, east 50 feet of Outlot B and Lot 4 of Kruger subdivision of Government Lot 3, Section 34, Tract 122 North, Range 32 West, Painesville Township, and the property address is 27663 Brookhaven Road in Painesville, Minnesota. And the applicant, can I get your name and address for the record? And then Jeff, you again for that as well.
Clark Updahl, and I'm at my home address, 11419 Kenyon Court, Blaine.
Thank you.
Jeff Evans, 15118 King B Drive, Painesville, Minnesota.
Thank you very much. And then, yep.
Sorry. Clark Updahl, 11419 Kenyon Court, Blaine, Minnesota.
Okay, and I think your microphone is on, Jeff, right?
It's showing green.
Okay, yeah, okay. You're good. I mean, this hasn't been too bad of a train wreck in rerunning this, so we'll be good. All right, and then staff, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, has you all had a chance to see the property? Those that have, please indicate. Thank you. The request is to leave as constructed a 1,416 square foot residential dwelling that is 9.5 feet from the west property line and 9.9 feet from the east property line, and a 10-foot by 12-foot water-oriented accessory structure that is 7 feet from the east property line and 7 feet to the ordinary high water level of Coronis Lake, which is classified general development. Also, to construct a 13-foot by 29-foot second-story addition on an existing dwelling less than 9.5 and 9.9 feet from the west and east property lines respectively, and on a lot with an impervious surface coverage that is 45%. Said ordinance requires residential dwelling and water-oriented accessory structure to be 10 feet from side property line, and water-oriented accessory structure to be 10 feet from the ordinary high water level of a lake classified as general development, and the lot shall not exceed 25% impervious surface coverage. The applicants currently own Lot 4 of Kruger Subdivision, Government Lot 3, that is approximately 7,835 square feet in lot area according to the survey. The applicants purchased the property in 2014. The applicants applied for and received a variance from Paynesville Township for the modification of a dwelling that is 36 feet from the center line of Brookhaven Road. The property is in the floodplain and shoreland overlay districts of Coronis Lake, which is on the list of impaired waters for aquatic life. The subsurface sewage treatment system that serves the dwelling was inspected and certified compliant in 2021. The property is zoned R1. The current impervious lot coverage is 45% according to the survey submitted by the applicant. There is no proposed increase on the impervious coverage. The existing dwelling was permitted in 2002 with 10-foot setbacks proposed from both the east and the west property lines. An elevation certification for the existing dwelling was provided in 2002, citing alternative methods allowed by Conditional Use Permit 2002-0010. The detached deck, water-oriented accessory structure, is shown by the assessor to have been built in 1992. There is no permit on file for this structure. The lot size is not sufficient for adequate stormwater treatment per section 7.26 of the Stearns County Ordinance 439. The alternative to the impervious lot coverage variance request would be to reduce the amount of impervious surface to bring the lot coverage to 25%. Paynesville Township, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, the North Fork Crow River Watershed District, the Coronis Lake Association, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. If the variance is granted, determine if mitigation as stated in Minnesota Statute 394.35 Subdivision 5 is required. Examples of mitigation are included in the staff report. I do not have any correspondence. That is all that I have.
Okay, and are there any members of the audience who wish to speak to this? Yes, please come up to the podium here and then state your name and address for the public record, please. Yes, please. Yep.
My name is Roland Ebert, and my permanent address is 470 East Hutchinson, P.O. Box.
Oh. Can I get you to repeat that just to make sure everybody got that?
My name is Roland Ebent. My permanent address is 472 Highway 7 East, P.O. Box 97, Hutchinson, Minnesota. We do have a lake home at 27671 Brookhaven Road, which is adjacent to the Updall's place that we have owned for over 25 years. So we've been there a long time. Did you want me to express my thoughts, or are you going to listen to
yep, nope,
Ms.
you're here. You can, yep. You can express your
Mr.
thoughts.
Updall's? I have no issues with Clark and Cindy Updall. They are very, very good neighbors. So I don't want to relate that to being a bad situation. But the ordinances that we deal with are for all the parties concerned. And I think in this case, some of these ordinances were compromised before the Updalls bought this property. And the ordinance are designed to protect them. They're also designed to protect me. And the only thing that I have a concern about here is the impervious surface, because my property is lower than that. As you know, if you've looked at the property, we are all in a floodplain out there. I do purchase flood insurance. It's not very cheap. I haven't had to use it, but I've done so. And in 2015, FEMA comes along and says, was this your permanent residence? I says, no, this is a summer residence. Well, you're going to have to pay a higher price for your flood insurance because, and we're going to raise it gradually over time here, because you have to live in that property for at least 1/2 of the 365 days in order to get it. Otherwise, we're considering that a gift from FEMA. So I've kind of been stuck with that. And I guess if there was some consideration here for making this impervious so I would get less runoff from stormwater coming to my property, I would have no problem whatsoever with what they're wanting to do here. Build up on top of their house, and this would help mitigate any water coming off of the paved area and into my property. I've tried to do as much mitigation as possible on my property. I've had a hosta bed where it's dug out, and I think the Updahls can say that it's a nice looking piece of property, and it does catch water, but it isn't big enough to catch all the water that's coming from not just their property, excuse me, on the other side that has been compromised too by doing things without building permits. So again, that's the only issues that I have. And I guess when you talk about a variance, one of the main purposes for granting variances is a hardship, and the hardship has to come from the land, not the owner. All of those lots along Kruger's additions there are pretty well the same. These were all platted out. They're all 50 feet in width along the lake, and they all are rectangular. So, you know, the lot was compromised previously. And I'm 80 years old. I've enjoyed this property for 25 years. Hopefully I can have another year or two. But my concern is if I were to sell it and somebody had to buy flood insurance because they had a mortgage, that would be very, very costly. If you do not have a mortgage like I do not have, I can pick a number to put on for my flood insurance. And if I want $25,000, $35,000, $40,000, that determines the premium. So I can live with that, but if I sold it and somebody wanted to use it as a permanent home and put a mortgage on it, it would be a hardship. So that's why I'm hoping that you can grant some mitigation things as proposed in your staff report that would be helpful.
Thank you so
and
much.
I thank you for hearing me, and I look forward to whatever plan you come up with, we'll accept.
Thank you so much. Applicants.
Am I on?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Chairman, board members, this is the last one of the night. Thank you for your patience and hanging in there with me. I'll do my best to keep this short so you guys can get on with your days. And Brian, thanks for your, walking me through some of this. I appreciate your time the other day on the phone. If it's okay, indulge me for 1 minute just to sort of, Brian's story was brilliant, but it's so complicated, it's hard for a simple guy like me to follow. So let me just sort of break it down into just more of what's happened and what's going on from my perspective. My wife and I bought a cabin on the other side of Corona in '96 and a 3-season place, loved it, and then our kids grew up, oddly enough. And then in 2014, we bought the place that it was currently the subject of this variance permit. At that point in time, we had 1 grandchild on the way. We now have 5. And So part of our goal here is to add some space within the footprint that we currently have on the second level, which we don't have built out up there for this over the bedroom, to give me an office, since now you can work remote, and the kids can watch TV or play games away from everybody underneath their feet. So our main purpose of this exercise is to stay within what's currently there and just add some more room for what has now become a much bigger family, fortunately. We bought the house in 2014, and whatever is there now was there then. We haven't done anything to it. We haven't expanded it. And I recognize that it was built maybe slightly closer to the edge lines than they should have done. That was all pre-existing. It's been there since they built it 20 years ago or whatever. The deck has been there 30 years. And all we want to do is just, in the process of learning, what do we need to do to just build this piece up there? We're told that there were these defects that existed, and it would be good to try to get them cleared up and sort of signed off on. And then also, we recognize there's this impervious area behind the back of the cabin. And as my neighbor so eloquently put, you know, it runs off, and we've indicated in our environmental engineer, or our engineer looked at it, is we offered to tear out some or all of that blacktopping and replace it with pavers or with a different kind of turf paver. And the staff instead is recommending a buffer at the lake level, which I think in his report says it would have minimal impact anyways. And I would like to take care of Mr. Ebent. I think mitigating the part of the driveway is probably the bigger issue for them. And as a good neighbor, if we just put natural grasses up at the front, that doesn't address his issue. And we're not proposing to add any more burden as far as water mitigation goes. We're talking about trying to mitigate something that we didn't cause. And we're trying to help out and be good neighbors here and only stay within the current footprint of what we have. So that's my story. That's what we're trying to do. And I realize that there's lots of provisions that we need to comply with, and there are things that happened in the past that the prior owners did or didn't do right. And we're not trying to exacerbate anything. We're just trying to take what's there and not make it any worse. And if we can make it a little better, we're happy to do that too. That's my statement.
Have anything next? Okay. Questions?
Yeah, I have, Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions, probably for the staff. So there's no restrictions against doing a two-story there, is there?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the existing structure is a non-conforming structure, so modifying that would be where the variance is needed. Also, along with having a property that is greater than 45 or 25% lot coverage for impervious. The addition itself, there's no additional considerations for that. Had the property lines, property setbacks been met and the property was under its impervious calculation of 25%, the addition would have been permitted.
So the way it was discovered, correct me if I'm wrong, is the applicant submitted a construction site permit to do the second story, and then you guys went out and measured everything out, and you found that it wasn't complying.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, when we receive an application on a property this size and we see that it's over its impervious lot coverage, we present them with a variance application because that's their next step. And part of that application is a checklist including a certificate of survey. And that certificate of survey indicated that the side yard property lines were closer than 10 feet. And we looked at the width of the structure and the width of the lot, and when it was proposed and the dimensions of the lot, it should fit. However, if it's not parallel with the property lines, you're going to get setback issues because it is skewed on the property. So when it was permitted, it may have been viewed as meeting setbacks, but at this point, with the certificate of survey, as evidence, which we didn't require back then, we now have these discrepancies that we'd like to clean up and have them just on the record as being permitted.
Okay. And so what the applicant said, can the stormwater issues be mitigated?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the stormwater mitigation is problematic because it requires 3 feet of separation from the bottom of the mitigation. So in the applicant's request for pervious pavers, from the bottom of that system to what we would call a restrictive layer or redoxamorphic features that we use to determine where the seasonally high water table is, needs to be 3 feet. In this case, they weren't going to be able to meet that 3-foot separation. That's needed for treating that water. We use the same standard for septic effluent. And if you look in the rear of the property, you'll see that all the septic systems are on mounds, which means that they weren't meeting that 3-foot separation. So as you get closer to the lake, it's only easily to assume that you would have a lot less separation as you get lower and lower. And it's in floodplain, so it's fairly quick to assume that they would not meet without having any soils information from the site.
So, but putting a second story on this doesn't change the runoff from the roof, does it?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, putting a second story on it does not change the amount of impervious lot coverage. They do have the option to change the runoff where it goes based on where gutter downspouts are placed and how the roof pitches are oriented on the structure. And those are potential mitigation options. They don't completely address the stormwater concerns, but they can help.
Yes. I think in our engineer's report, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, we did offer to install rain barrels and direct the water towards rain barrels at the rear. I guess that'd be whichever way, the street side portion of the cabin. So we did contemplate that and are willing to do that if that's the board would want that.
I guess what I'm getting at is here you got an existing structure. They're not going to change the footprint of the structure. They're going to go up another story. Doesn't sound to me like it's going to significantly change the runoff from the roof, and that can be mitigated to some extent. And the applicant is willing to do some more mitigation for the stormwater. Granted, you might not get to the standards that we want, but this is an existing structure. I mean, if you wanted to really solve the problem, you tell them to tear it down. Right? That would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
Most of these were built too big in the first place.
Right. I'm
That's
being
what causing
facetious
the
when I say
problem.
that, but we got to use some common sense here to say when you have an existing structure, it was it existed, it got permitted way back when, and now they want to improve it. I don't know. I guess there's no good solution to solve every problem that the county has with this particular property.
Mr. Chair, isn't that, the idea is now, when they've asked for this variance to do this, we're supposed to try to bring it back down to 25%. How close can they get by if they did everything they could possibly do to mitigate this, could they get close to the 25%?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I believe the dwelling without the driveway met the 25% lot coverage as it was permitted back in 2002, I believe is when it was permitted. So it would be the removal of the entire driveway on the road side of the property that would be getting them closer to that 25%. Now, I haven't calculated those numbers out, but that was an option that was part of the original request, is to remove the driveway and place pervious pavers in place of that driveway, eliminating that percentage. And I do believe that got us below 25%. However, the pervious pavers were determined not to be a suitable solution because of that lack of separation. So that option would have to be remove the driveway and turn it to green space and not have that driveway there.
And where can you go from there?
As far as
what else can they do? Because they're really too close to the water table. So what else? What other option is there?
There weren't a lot of options available. If you look at the letter from the engineer, and then you look at what was proposed by Soil and Water Conservation District, there really weren't a lot of options for stormwater mitigation on the property, just because of the size of the property and the location of the property and the lack of that 3 foot of separation. There's just nowhere to treat the water. There's nowhere to put the water in retention ponds or what have you. So there just wasn't a lot of options there other than to minimize some of that impact by rerouting the water away from the lake, giving it time, hopefully, as it runs over the land to maybe filter out sediment.
I didn't want to interrupt another question if you had one. I just to build off of that question for just 1 second, which is, we're willing to tear that impervious out and put in pavers. And admittedly, that does not 100% solve the problem, but doesn't it to some extent improve it from where it is to where it could be, even if the percentage now isn't the difference, isn't the ability to have some other kind of material there which would be more able to absorb the water, maybe not to satisfy the strict legal reading of it. And so that's what I would offer we'd be willing to do, because the alternative is to do nothing, and then we'll just leave it as it is, and then the pervious will stay there. And I'm not sure that that's a better outcome.
Any other questions at all?
So I guess I have just a couple more comments. So we could probably, the county could probably go to your great neighbor who stood up and talked to us, and he would have the same situation, perhaps, right? Is he out of tolerance with the property lines and impervious surfaces? It could be all of them along there.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, other permits that I've processed in that neighborhood have had similar problems.
Okay, that's good to know.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I do have one comment about replacing the existing asphalt with pervious pavers. It may help mitigate the problem. However, at the county, we still would not be able to consider that pervious because it doesn't meet that treatment requirement. So it may help mitigate some of the issue, but it's not technically going to get you to that 25% or under that 25%.
Could the variance be granted in a way to grant me, in essence, being out of compliance with the impervious area, but with the understanding that I would replace the current asphalt?
That's a question of the board.
Right. So I guess that would be my request of the board. That. Sorry, you're.
Oh no, he can come back up.
Okay.
You wanted to comment again, I think.
All right, I wasn't sure where you
Yep,
pointed
no, you're good.
I don't know if you want me to state an opinion on that. Anything that they are willing to do with impervious pavers would help the situation instead of the blacktop.
Could you state your name and address again, please?
Okay.
For the record.
Roland Ebent, 472 Highway 7 East, P.O. Box 97, Hutchinson, Minnesota.
Thank you.
Anything that you would be willing to do with pavers would help, because it would take something. We don't have floodwaters coming in there all the time. When we get a 5-inch rain or 4 or 5-inch rain, it's going to be water standing. But if you have a 1-inch or 2-inch thunderstorm, it isn't going to be something I can't live with, and the rest of us can't live with. At least something has been done to help mitigate the problem. It's going to be better than what it is. That's just my opinion as a neighbor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions?
I have a question for either the applicant or his contractor. I noticed in the paperwork that we received, you know, I'm familiar with impervious pavers, but in here they had something called turf stone. Can you tell me, like, what's the difference between those and what's the effectiveness of, you know, turf stone compared to pavers?
I brought you up here for a reason, Jeff.
Well, what they are is basically they're a cement pad, and they have holes in the center of them, and you plant grass in them. Grass grows in them. So it's kind of like a gravel road where you got the grass growing down the center of the road. It's supposed to slow down the water, basically.
And would you say the turf stone is more effective than pavers, or about the same, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
The problem is the separation, so you don't have that filtering
That
out
3 feet.
again. So, you know, in the situation there, the soils aren't probably suitable for, you know, it basically works like a drain field. You know, I mean, it's all water. The water table's high there. So I would guess that would probably, you know, it would help, but it's probably not going to do any better than a paver. I don't know if that answers your question.
Any other questions from members of the board at all? Got to ask this before I close the public hearing.
Can I just one quick comment as a follow-up? If you're considering that, I guess I would like a chance to understand what the difference is just from an aesthetic standpoint. If it's it's just a minimal difference from a performance, and I think one is aesthetically better, I'd like the option to do the one I like better.
There's also the thing with the pervious pavers. They're not, as far as we know, they're not, but even if we do approve them, they've been known to, if people don't, you have to keep them up, because otherwise the holes, the cracks get full of dirt, and pretty soon it's just solid. It's no different than your concrete as it is today. So it comes down to a whole lot of...
Fair enough. I think Mr. Eben would agree. We do a very nice job of taking care of our place and are very diligent about keeping it up. And if I'm going to put money into replacing asphalt, I arguably could ask you to ignore, but I'm willing to do it because I think it's the right thing to do, and I want for myself and my neighbor, and I think it could look good. We're going to invest the money and do it right. So you can't legislate that, but that's, you know, that's sort of how we roll. But thank you for considering it, and that's my last comment, unless anybody else has any questions for me.
If not, ask the audience if there's anybody again who wants to testify. Anybody? Anybody at all? Anybody at all? All right. If not, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to close the public hearing.
George has made a motion to close the public hearing. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second from Bonnie. We have closed the public hearing, and now we move to our finding of facts. Beginning with question number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which this subject property is located.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt, but I do want to make sure we clarify there were 2 findings of fact available. Correct. The findings of fact, if you would specify as to which part of the request, the entire request, or what, so that it's clear for the record which part of the request, or if all of the request you are
Sure.
speaking to.
So we've got the one here, one for, yeah.
And I don't mean to belabor our time, but I think in this situation it might be best to do the 2 separate, because regardless of what the decision is for the addition, we want to be sure to be able to clear up the side yard setbacks, you know, that we're not really didn't play a factor in our discussions, but yet we should clear that up for them.
And the deck also is included in there.
Yep.
There's also the deck, water-oriented accessory structure.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we neglected to discuss that. Yep. Thank you for catching that.
I didn't think that was a big issue back there, but it's
It's something we need to clear up, that it's only 7 feet from the property line and from the ordinary high water. Question for applicant. You know, moving that to meet those setbacks, you know, moving it 3 feet back and 3 feet over, how difficult a situation would that be for you?
There's currently a lot of landscaping around that, including that's where we go down to our dock. So there's steps that go down from there. So moving that would require, you know, a fair amount of reconfiguring of those things, plus how it was landscaped. And you probably can't, it's probably nothing here that you can see it. But is design, it's only like 1 or 2 steps up, but to move it back 3 feet would sort of put it, there's not a ton of yard between the lake, the cabin, and the shore, so it would be a burden, and I don't know expense-wise how expensive it would be, but it would really change the whole configuration and look of the property in the front. I would appreciate it if I wasn't asked to.
That part wouldn't bother me.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I've just one more clarifying question. So for the applicant, you're building on a second story, doesn't change the footprint, and there's an existing deck on the lake side?
Yes, it's the freestanding deck. It's, what size is it, Jeff? Would you say?
It was 10 by 12.
10 by 12 deck. This just it's in essence, it's between where the cabin is, and you walk several steps, and then there's like a little sitting area. You can sit out there on chairs. It's not raised at all. It's not like a deck attached to the dwelling.
Yeah, you're not doing anything with that. That just exists. And
it exists. We put a couple lawn chairs out there in the summer, and then it's also where we take our first steps down to the dock where we put the dock in.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
It's just too close to the setbacks in
Yeah.
every direction. You can see it from the road back there, and it's not a big deal.
You can see the landscaping around there is all sort of big boulder kind of rocks. Yep, about where you got up above and then there's riprap below the deck. So, and there's plants and stuff in there too. We've got hostas and.
Okay.
All of these are the problems I've mentioned years ago. We should not do these in winter time when there's this much snow out there. We can't see.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And do you think we should then just? Okay. So is the board just comfortable with doing that all as one? I think. Or, yeah. Yep. Yep. All of it at one. Okay. All right. So number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located. Yes or no?
Well, additions and decks are, you know, allowed in this zoning area.
Okay. Yes, from Bonnie for number 1. Any differing opinions on the board for this? Okay. That's a yes for number 1. Number 2, a variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intents of the official controls.
Mr. Chair, yes, I believe that it will, with the addition of the stormwater mitigation. I know we're not going to get perfect, but we're going to get better.
Yes, from George for number 2, board in agreement. Okay. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Jill, we're waiting for you.
I'll let you guys do this one.
I don't have the book in front of me. I can't cite them like you can. So, Mr. Chair, I'll say yes, it is. I can't cite specifics, but I think it's.
Let's go with that Lakeshore Living. It's a good theme.
Yes,
to go with.
yes.
Yeah, let's go with that one. Yes from George. Board in agreement on yes for number 3. Okay. Good old Lakeshore Living. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner.
I would say yes.
Okay. Is a yes for us. Board in agreement for yes for number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner.
Mr. Chair, I'd say yes. He purchased a piece of property with an existing structure, and it was deemed okay at the time.
Board in agreement for yes for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality.
Mr. Chair, I would say yes, it actually would improve the character with a new facade, the new outline of the home.
Okay, yes from George. Board in agreement for a yes for number 6. Okay. And finally, number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Well, I think it does, because the side yard setbacks, they are what they are. And in order for us to, clean that up a little bit, I think that would be good to approve that. The deck that's there's been there for a long time. It's not extremely large that it's going to cause, a lot of runoff or erosion. So I think it would.
Okay. Yes for the number 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes for number 7, and so all answers of the questions being in the affirmative, can I get a motion for approval? And then we wanted to put on the conditions. For, pavers, right? Is that what we?
Well, can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
Is it for staff? Would it be possible for us to put a condition on that they come up with a plan for mitigation and submit that to staff for approval? Because if they don't know if they're going to use the turf or the turf blocks, the pavers, what they talked about, some rain gutters, or is that something we could ask Soil and Water to work with them on, or what would be staff's recommendation on that?
Mr. Chair, Member Mossman, Shelley Benson, I think the issue is that you could talk about gutters, you could talk about rain barrels. That'll help at least manage water and rate that. That's one thing. I don't think there's any objection or any concern related to that. When you use the term mitigation, when it relates to patio or the impervious, the pavers, that's where the struggle comes in. So you realize that you may be doing something that will help do something, but technically it's not mitigating. So I don't want to use the word mitigate in relation. You may be doing something that has some other benefit, but it's not going to change their impervious surface number. It's going to stay at the same, because we can't, without that separation, we can't call it mitigation. So while they may be doing some things that bring it to an advantage, for neighbors, it's not mitigating the impervious surface. It's just a change for other, I'm going to use the word, but not necessarily completely accurate, aesthetics.
But I thought we had a discussion. We heard that it would improve it.
The whole problem here comes the water table has to be 3 feet from the top and it's only 2 feet, and we can't change that. And that's where the problem's coming.
So
No
it's
matter what we do, he'd have to pipe all the water to
somewhere else.
off.
So it's not technically mitigation, so the impervious surface will stay at 45%. However, it may help a neighboring situation. So I don't think there's objection to the concept. I just don't want to use the word mitigation for that because it's not going to change the 45% impervious surface.
Well, could we use the word improve?
Oh, sure. Well, and that way, if you say change it to some type of paver that allows for improvement.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I suggest, we could approve it based on an industry standard that improves whatever the right wording would be after that.
Water.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to, in my opinion, I don't want to put this back where he has to send something to the county and the county's in the position to approve or deny it. I think we need to do it, say, an industry standard that improves the situation. Otherwise, it puts him in a box.
And it would create a box for us because we couldn't approve it.
Yeah.
Right.
Is someone speaking right now? I can't hear them.
Oh. Just get real close.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. My suggestion was, I don't want to write your orders for you, but you're going to allow me to offer this because I'm going to live with it. To be obligated to remove the current impervious asphalt surface from the back of the house and replace it with pavers, if that's the right term, pavers of the nature, maybe we've got one we can point to, having no less water mitigation qualities than that set forth in whatever that standard is. So if we do better, we can do that, but we have to do at least a certain level. But then it would stay with an impervious surface coverage of 45%.
We're okay then.
But
I have a question of the board. He talked about rain gutters and rain barrels, and what are our thoughts on that? Maybe you can describe to us what the current situation of the house is with rain gutters.
And Jeff, I'll let you speak to part of that, but I'm willing to do that. I think right now the gutters run off they run off down the front, right down to. Why don't you take this?
Yeah, they just run onto the driveway. they don't go anywhere. The water is coming to the driveway and it's running to both neighbors. I mean, if they put any kind of paver in there, it would slow that down. It's kind of like a dosing for a sewer system. You have a time delay on it. Only put so many gallons into a sewer system at a time. It would slow down the water. It would have to help. For the neighbors.
But do you think we need to put in barrels? What impact would that have?
Barrels would help because you could drain them. You could have them weep off slow, kind of like you do to a sewer system that you only lets out so much onto the yard. It would slow down the water. Basically, you're trying to slow it down so the water can absorb or go wherever it's going to go.
And would those be above ground barrels or subsurface barrels?
The engineer really didn't spec nothing for that. I would think you put them on top just for.
I've seen it done both ways, where they've buried them just so that you didn't see them.
Yeah, but where are we going to go with it once we got it buried?
Yeah.
It's hard to drain it to anywhere.
I was going to say, you're in the water table.
Right.
They're yeah, so it's pretty tough.
That's right.
It's pretty tough. At least I can dip some water out or in water flowers or plants or hostas or something.
Yep. Well, if the chair is ready, I'd be ready to make
Wonderful.
I'll make a motion to approve the request for the variance for the side yard setbacks on both sides of the house, for the deck that is currently the side yard setback and the OHWL setback for the deck, and construction of the second-story addition, with the condition that the bituminous material between the road and the house be removed, and that on the new section of the dwelling that you add gutters and rain barrels to accommodate them, and use some type of industry approved product such as, but not exclusive to, pavers or turf stone in order to attempt to improve the water runoff situation. That sound
Good.
right?
Perfect.
Okay.
Motion from Bonnie. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. A second from Rob, and then the remainder of the board. What? Good.
And one additional condition
Oh, yep.
is, do we need a financial guarantee for this one? Okay, I want to check that before we. All right,
point,
thank
yeah.
you.
That's right. All right. Roll of the rest of the board. George.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, we did. Rob did. Yep. Jill.
Yes.
Okay, Ken. And I'm a yes. Your variance is approved. Thank you very much for appearing here tonight. And then staff have anything for us?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment. I was not able to visit any of the sites for this month. I just wanted on record.
Thank you.
That I was not able to visit any site.
Okay, thanks. Lori?
No, so I didn't visit any sites either. Is that a requirement, or is it just?
It's pretty helpful.
It's a lot easier to gauge the situation. Unfortunately, like Ken said, in the winter it's a challenge. You can't always see everything, so.
You get mileage.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was able to ask the question. I do think the staff, you do a great job in detailing out what's involved, where things are placed, and so forth. So, I mean, I didn't have a problem visualizing anything without going out there. But
see, I had an argument way back when I started that the commissioners should also go visit the sites, because sometimes we'd be talking about things, and they for the planning commission, and they'd change things because they had never been there and saw what the site looked like, and sometimes there's a big difference.
From what you see on paper, it looks a lot different.
Yeah.
When you get there.
sometimes I imagine it does.
Mm-hmm. Lori, anything for us?
Just letting you know, I think there's like 6 applications for February.
Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice job.